This year is the 5th annual Philadelphia Podcast Festival, and I could not be happier to be bringing Everything Is Awesome back for the second year in a row. That's right, Everything Is Awesome Late Night comes back to the Philadelphia Podcast Fest at Tattooed Moms on Sunday, July 16th from 2 to 3 p.m., and it's going to be so much fun. We have Noah Houlihan on hand to talk about Plus 2 comedy, Game the Gamer. We have Brian Durkin to bring the funny. He's going to tell some jokes. We're going to talk podcasting, full belly laughs, and much, much more. Mike and I will be on hand to talk many things, play games. It's going to be just so much fun. Make sure you make your way out to the 5th annual Philadelphia Podcast Festival, especially from 2 to 3 at Tattooed Moms, so you can see Everything Is Awesome Late Night live.
Everything Is Awesome is part of Courts and Parts, a podcast network featuring pop culture, TV, movie, and geek podcasts. Check out some of our other shows, like TV Ate My Brain, Let's Chat with Revelin Friends, and Podstalgic at courtsandparts.com.
Hey, super friends, it's your host, Kev. Cutting in before the actual start of the show, just because I wanted to get a couple things out. This episode here, episode 75, you know how I am with numbers. Episode 25 and 50, we had Batman, the 1 year special. We did a whole podiversary show at Tattooed Mom with 4 other great podcasts. This is episode 75, and originally I was going to try to interview a great character that I love from a great thing that I love, but it just didn't work out, so maybe next time, maybe another time, but for, just a couple days ago, July 1st was the 10-year anniversary of when I started podcasting, at least when my first podcast was published. I probably honestly started recording podcasts sometime in June, but the first published podcast was July 1st of 2007, and I wanted to record a 10-year special, and that's what this is. That's why it's over 2 hours long. I don't think it's the longest podcast we've done, but it's up there with Everything Is Awesome. It is up there with the lengthwise. So, it's just a great candid conversation about the history of podcasting, because, and I don't think about this that often, but I've been there since nearly the beginning. This medium is about 11 years old. I think sometime in 2006 is when the term podcast was coined. Before that, there were webcasts, and I think primarily just radio stations put some clips up, segments up, and called them webcasts. And then eventually the term podcast was coined, and we got, these great, unique personalities, some of them, celebrities, some of them not, and here we are today, to where it is just a great little playground of creative people. And so this conversation is kind of like not only a history of me as a podcaster, but this episode is a history of podcasting and a story of trying to figure it all out, because no one knew what a podcast was. And I would say what I do now is definitely a podcast, but what I did 10 years ago is a lot closer to a radio show. I mentioned it during the episode with our guest this week, is that we modeled ourselves over a local show here in Philly, Matt and Huggy. They had a pretty good, solid 2-hour format, and we thought that's probably what worked best for us, and that's kind of what we went with. And eventually, over the years, I started, as I started other podcasts, they were a little bit more podcast-centric, but still had that little radio kind of feel to it, and whatnot. So like I said, I'm babbling now. I'm sorry. You have 2 hours to listen to the history of this. I also want to give a shout out to, I'm not going to name people specifically, but because you'll hear them throughout the show. You're actually, after you hear this, you'll hear the 10-year intro special that I created, and then it's going to kick off with a couple voicemails that some people from my podcasting history were kind enough to to leave to say some words about me being in this business or whatever you want to call it for the last 10 years. So just thank you to everybody who was able to call in. And the people that I wanted to call in and didn't, totally not their fault. I let them know about a day before I started editing that I wanted it in here, and everyone said they would do their best, or some of them just got the message a day or two late. So I totally get that they, why they didn't get it to me. That was my fault. I dropped the ball. At the 20-year special, maybe we'll get some cats to do it, but. Yeah, so thank you to them, guys. Thank you to my guests, who you will hear in just a couple minutes here. And more importantly, or maybe not more importantly, it's probably equally important, thank you to you guys who, whether you've followed me from the beginning, whether you've been a Steel Tip fan and now a Nerdy Kev fan, for the last 10 years, and you followed me from Happy Hour with Steel Tip to Creepcast to Happy Hour to Stabcast and to finally to here. Thank you. Whether you're a brand new listener, whether this is your first ever episode of Everything is Awesome, which this is a weird one to hop into, but gets you caught up on who I am. Thank you all for being wonderful listeners, for supporting us the way you do, by just listening. Each and every month, we see better numbers than the month before, and I'm not a numbers guy, but that's good. That's a great thing, and I'm just so happy to be doing this this podcast. So happy to be in podcasting, and so happy that after 10 years of doing it, and honestly, I mean, it was at about the 8 or 9 year mark, is when I discovered the fact that podcasting was really no longer like you need to be in the know kind of community. It was a thing where you could find other podcasters and have meetups. You could have festivals. Something that in about a week or two, the last 2 weekends of July is the 5th annual Philadelphia Podcast Fest, and I dreamt of something like this 6 years ago. I remember having a conversation with Santoro from the Stabcast and saying, we should, they're doing the second year of VidCon out in LA, and that's cool, but podcasting is it's up there. It's getting popular. There's more and more podcasts. There's lots of podcasts. There should be a PodCon of some sort. And I don't know if LA or if New York or Chicago had their podcast fest up and running yet. I probably should know that because I have been looking at them more and more recently. But 6 years ago, I wanted to start something like a festival or a convention or something like that. And Nate and Tegan beat me to it. But it's wonderful that, 6 years from that moment, or 5 years ago, or just now, last year was my first Philadelphia Podcast Fest, and it was an amazing experience to see 30-plus podcasters come together to put on their brands in front of a live audience. What was even more wonderful, and yes, the live audiences that were there were probably a mixture of friends and family of those podcasters, but there were also people there who stayed for other shows. There were people there who just heard about the festival because of advertising and wanted to pop in. And there were people there who happened to walk into Tattooed Mom or Amalgam Comics, and they're like, what's this going on? A podcast fest? Let me check this out. So it's just a testament to podcasting today. And, it's, there's some arguments, I think, as to what the podcasting city is. James D'Amato thinks it's Chicago. I think other people think it's LA. Other people think it's New York. And I, of course, think it's Philly. I mean, the 5th annual Philadelphia Podcast Festival has over 60 shows at this point, and I get that it's, to me, it's a big deal that we're bringing in bigger name podcasts from other areas, and it breaks the mold of what the Philadelphia Podcast Fest has been in the past, celebrating local podcasting. But I don't necessarily believe you need to be a local podcaster to partake in this festival and help celebrate podcasts and help celebrate podcasts in Philadelphia specifically. You can be outside of the area, you can be in LA, wherever. That's more the mold of New York and LA, and I think even Chicago. Like those three festivals usually are just quote unquote big name podcasts that have some sort of celebrity power behind it. And there's, I don't notice many of the quote unquote little guys out there. And maybe it's because I don't know who the little guys are in those cities. So it's what I'm trying to say is, Philadelphia Podcast Fest is unique. It is mostly free, which is a unique thing when it comes to all these festivals in Chicago, DC, New York, and LA. Obviously, the bigger name acts are at venues that require a cost, and you need to buy tickets and whatnot. But and that's great. I mean, that's well deserved. They've spent a life trying to cultivate that kind of career for themselves, what I enjoy is that the festival itself is largely free, because this medium is a free medium. It costs us as a podcaster a shitload of money. But it's free for nothing for you guys, and I love that we have Tattooed Mom and Amalgam Comics and Coffee House and Kitchen Table Gallery and Bridge Set Sound, and all these other places that are offering up their venues for free for the festival. It is an amazing thing, and I think it's great that for the 5th year we were able to get shows like We Got This with Mark and Hal, Flophouse, Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, and a bunch called Your Girlfriend, I believe, is another one. All these, quote-unquote, non-Philadelphia acts, we'll say. So that's not really a quote. They're not local necessarily to here. I think it's great that we brought them in to help expose the festival and also to offer just another option to you, because, not every... And, I mean, obviously you guys are fans if you're listening to this, but not everyone wants to sit around and listen to me be dopey on a live stage, because who am I? Who am I? Goddamn, I'm a national treasure. That's who I am. That's right. That Nerdy Kev is a national treasure. Anyway, I've taken up a lot of your time. This was supposed to be a quick little pre-intro to say... explain why this episode 75 is the 10-year special, airing a couple days after the actual 10-year anniversary, and also to say thank you to you, to all the co-hosts I've ever had in the last 10 years, Jay, Jonesy, Santoro, C-Rob, Tom, Aaron, Mike, of course, G-Fab, Big O, Garrett, and Matthew and Nicholas, and JV, and Dan Kurtz. God, so many important people, and I know I've probably left some people off, so I apologize, because I'm just rambling as I drive here, just spouting whatever's off my brain. So thank you to all my co-hosts, those I named, those that I forgot, I apologize. Thank you all for being part of this journey with me over the last 10 years. Thank you to all the people who I've met and have maintained relationships over the last 10 years, and especially with this ride that I call Everything is Awesome. It's been a special ride. It's been amazing. It's been a very creatively fulfilling project that I've done, and I just want to thank you to all the people who I've met through this. Nate, Tegan, all the Philly podcasters, and all the great guests I've talked to over the last 75 plus episodes, with all my bonus episodes and whatnot. So, thank you all. It's been an amazing 10 years. I can't wait for the next 10. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm not going to be back after this to close anything up, so the next episode you'll hear will be my interview with Hal Lublin from the We Got This with Mark and Hal podcast. He's a Philadelphia native, Montco native. So very excited for that conversation. Can't wait for you guys to hear it. And of course, make sure you check out the Philadelphia Podcast Festival, July 14th through the 23rd on those weekends. And you find Everything Is Awesome specifically on July 16th at Tattooed Mom from 2 to 3 p.m. However, I will be at Tattooed Mom all day on July 15th and July 16th, helping run things. So if you want to come and have an unofficial Super Friend hangout, please do. I want to meet some of you guys, and just come up and say hi, and it'll be a good time. All right, again, I've babbled now way too long, so let's just get to the next 2 hours of your life, and that's listening to basically the history of podcasting over the last 10 years, and also the history of my personal podcast journey right here on awesomepodcast.com.
Awesome! Oh, what is the malted liquor? What gets you drunker quicker? What comes in bottles or in cans? Beer! In a world where radio's dead, this show is better than head. Oh yeah, listen to what I said. Listen to Steel Tip and Jay.
Awesome.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
I'm sick of smiling.
Are you ready?
You're listening to Happy Hour. You're listening to
Hey, think you could tell us what to do? You think you could tell us what to wear? You think that you're better? Well, you better get ready. Bow to the masters. Break it down.
What the fuck is the internet?
The internet is a communications tool used the world over where people can come together to bitch about movies and share pornography with one another.
with your host, Steel Tip.
The sexy beast is back, baby!
You're listening to Happy Hour.
A peanut walks into a bar, right? Uh-huh. And he's assaulted.
And he's assaulted. You idiot. It took a second to register, like, what? Oh, you freaking moron. That's a white people joke.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome!
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome! 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 That was awesome!
You guys are awesome.
No, you're awesome!
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome! Seriously!
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome!
This is Mike from Tellest here, one of Kev's longtime co-hosts. I've been through many train wrecks with Kev, so it's pretty inspirational to see him rise so high. 10 years, buddy. I'm proud of you.
Hey, it's Shannon Cole from the Shannon Cole Band. I can't believe it's been 10 years. This is absolutely insane. I can't believe that I also let you be in my life for 10 years. That's even more insane and disappointing. Well, congratulations on the 10-year mark. You're probably not going to do much more after this, but good for you, though. Anyway, thank you so much for getting me involved, and thank you so much for the awesome memories and the great conversations and all the inappropriate jokes. And I'm looking forward to the next 10 years. Have an awesome, awesome show. Rock on. Bye.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And this week's episode is a very special episode. Today we are celebrating 10 years of podcasting. July 1st, 2007, the very first podcast I hosted, Happy Hour Steel Tip, went up live. And so I decided to pull as many people from that show together as I legally was allowed to. So please welcome to the show this week, Santoro.
Couple things happening here. First of all, right out of the gate, like, you're super excited. Like, we were having a normal conversation.
Yes.
I'm like, hey, man, I'm telling you how somebody owes me like $7,000.
Which is
yeah,
like a serious conversation.
I'm a little bummed out, like, literally it was the only client I worked for last month, and, they owe me $7,000. So, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. Welcome, this is awesome. Blah, 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 blah. Secondly, I want to apologize to everyone. Apparently, I'm responsible for this 10 years of podcasting.
Yep.
So I don't know how many people have listened to you over the last 10 years, but I apologize to...
A solid 7.
There's 7. Those 7 people are going to file a class action lawsuit against me.
It is, yes. Santoro is the reason that I've been podcasting for 10 years. And it all started because I broke my ankle from wrestling. So, I had nothing to do.
Right, and apparently I knew you from those wrestling days. We were
because you were running sound for FTW, Falls Township Wrestling.
Yeah, so anyone that ever went out to a FTW show, I apologize. That was the reason that you could hear theme music.
Were you in charge of the mics too, or just the theme music?
I think you guys supplied your own microphones, maybe.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Yeah, that is literally like.
I remember. What's the fourth wall called in wrestling?
Like
there's
babe?
Yeah. Apparently, because you guys would give me a run of show, play Steel Tip's intro, play opponent's intro, Steel Tip wins, and I would just post that in the middle of wherever I was.
Well, that was usually just the back. I don't think anyone, the general public, ever had access.
I think I was outside for one show. Then you guys moved me backstage after that.
There was. Oh, and actually outside, we did an outdoor show. I don't know if you were involved with that.
I did that.
Yeah, that was. I think that's the one where Jay, who is in this 10 years of podcasting, he started Happy Hour Steel Tip.
Oh, is he here with us today?
No, he's not here with us today. No,
okay.
Like I said, legally allowed.
Is he running late?
Yeah, he's running late. But that was that the show, that outdoor show is where he juiced for the first time, and that's wrestling terminology for taking a blade to his forehead, and he cut way too deep, way too long. Had to go to the hospital. Good times.
Oh, okay. I thought he was on steroids. I guess that's common in wrestling, though. Correct?
Yeah,
Not a banned substance.
It is now, I think, but
okay.
10, 15 years ago it wasn't.
I know we're getting way off topic here, but. Banned substance, I think in baseball, I think you should be allowed creatine and steroids. It's cool watching some guy hit the ball 550 feet. That's cool.
I feel like we've had this discussion in Stabcast days.
10 years.
Yeah, the last 10 years.
Was Mark McGuire a thing? That's when we had this. Cool.
Yeah.
It was cool watching him hit the ball.
I don't, as long as it's not if everyone's able to do it, then it should be allowed.
Yeah, anyone should be able to take steroids. They should here's what they should do. The pitchers should take steroids and be able to grease their fingers, and then the batters should be females that are on steroids. That's the game I'd watch.
That's interesting.
Maybe the pitchers shouldn't have an advantage then. Just females on steroids.
There you go.
Batting.
Maybe. Yeah. We'll see. Maybe that could be.
Who am I kidding? Women can't do things like that.
That could be a sequel, or a trilogy, the third film in the Major League Baseball. What was the films? Little League, Little Women. What was the movie with women that played baseball?
No crying in baseball.
Yeah, whatever that movie.
Well, that was a true story. That was when women had to play during the World War because the men were fighting for our country, doing actual stuff.
Yeah, but
women wanted to feel useful.
You just turned that into a longer story. It's funny, that actual story about that movie. It came up in conversation with a buddy of mine, Garrett, who will probably also come up in a conversation later today. But his aunt was one of those, one of the characters in the movie are based off of her.
Oh, that's cool.
I just found that out, and she passed away, so R.I.P. But that's nuts. That's nuts that
Tom Hanks was in that movie. Tom Hanks is not in bad movies. No. Now, Sully I didn't like the movie. I felt Did you see the film?
No, I did not see Sully.
Well, I felt that they were Clint Eastwood, Tom Hanks. I felt that they were stretching the movie. It would have been perfect for a made-for-TV movie.
Oh yeah,
it was about that long.
Okay,
but they had to make it a feature length, and it was just like so.
There was too much fluff.
So long, yeah. I mean, Tom Hanks was great in it. The guy that played his co-pilot, which his name escapes me, he was great. I ended up going out on a date with some girl that works in the airline industry in Philadelphia, and Sully and the co-captain flew for her airline, so she saw them all the time.
Oh wow!
Like she personally knew them, and she validated a lot of the stuff in the movie. Like there's flight when they're crashing, the flight attendants like keep repeating something like arms up, whatever. They keep in cadence. They kept repeating something. And she's like, being in the industry, that's crazy to listen to because that's exactly how it should be. But she knew Sully, and, in the movie, it's him and a co-pilot. And in airlines, you fly three trips in your leg, or 3 legs in your trip.
Okay.
So it'd be like Philadelphia to Dallas would be leg 1. Dallas to Florida would be leg 2. Florida to Philadelphia would be leg 3.
Okay.
And the way it goes by FAA regulations, the pilot flies the first one, the co-pilot flies the second, then the pilot flies the third again.
Oh, interesting.
That way they can get like sleep and whatnot. But in the case of an emergency, the pilot takes over. So the co-pilot's actually flying the leg of the trip when they hit the birds. And then in the movie, you hear Sully say, the co-pilot says, "Oh, we've had a problem here." Sully immediately, "My plane," and then he takes the controls. And that's something like you don't notice unless you're in the industry.
That's crazy. That makes me want to watch the film more.
It's pretty cool just because it's accurate. I felt it was a little too long though, but Tom Hanks is great.
I love Tom Hanks.
Do you want to roll your intro again because I feel we've gotten off topic? Here's my made up voice.
So to bring it back in, yes,
10 years.
10 years of
10 years of Tom Hanks. Toy Story, that was 20 years ago, though, wasn't it?
Was that 20 years ago?
Yeah, because my son, I have a 5-year-old, and my son is last year, he was hugely into Toy Story stuff. 1, 2, 3, I can't tell you how many times we've seen each one. I'm like, wow, you know what? This is like 20-plus years. And Toy Story 4 is coming out, and he's mad because he was psyched up for it last year when they announced it. I'm like, okay, buddy, like we'll probably see it in like a year, Pushed it back. It's coming out 2 years. As of 2 days ago, it will be 2 years that it's coming out.
Oh, wow.
But because Pixar, I read up all kinds of Pixar stuff because he was into Toy Story. Pixar doesn't want to make sequels to their movies. They feel that when they tell a story, it's done, it's told. But being that Disney bought Pixar, sequels are a huge Disney thing, as we all know.
I was going to say, there's 3. They just released Cars 3.
Yeah, and Toy Story is their flagship. That was the first fully animated computer movie.
Yeah.
And the Pixar computers are incredible. If you look at their movies and their technology, they're just so far ahead of the game. So they want to make sure Toy Story 4 is by far the best movie ever because it's their flagship.
And that's the one thing about Pixar that they're... I've only really seen the Toy Story movies. Maybe I've seen some other ones, but... Toy Story, no matter what, every single one of them that they put out is great.
Yeah.
Unlike, I've heard Cars 2 is not great.
Cars 2 sucks. But what they do is every time they release a movie, they want to showcase a new talent.
Yeah.
The reason Andy doesn't have a dad in Toy Story is realistically, they couldn't get the hairs on the human body to move the way they wanted. So if you see Andy's mom in the movie, she has a ponytail.
Yeah.
And it's stationary. She moves her head, and the ponytail moves with it. So then their next movie was Monsters Incorporated.
Yeah.
Sully has over 1 million furs on his body that all move independently of each other. So they couldn't get the hair right in Toy Story.
Oh, that's nuts.
So they wanted to focus on the hair in Monsters. Cars, they wanted to focus on reflections. That's why they're Cars.
Isn't it crazy when you become a parent what rabbit holes you go down? Like what you find fascinating?
Oh, I know. It is fascinating. We went to the Pixar exhibit at the Franklin Institute. That's how I know all this stuff.
That we did not catch that, but
it takes... There's one scene in Toy Story, 1 minute worth of screen time. It took the Pixar computer, which is 1,600 computers in a room.
Jesus Christ.
It took that computer 42 hours to render 1 minute of Toy Story.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow.
But now, like, I can just, even my son notices, like, when we see another animated film, he's like, oh, this isn't a Pixar movie. He just knows by looking at the quality of the film.
That's funny. Well,
which still isn't bad, but it's like, it's not Pixar. Oh, this isn't Pixar.
I'm
walking out of this. This story's subpar.
They've built their brand, and they know, and you know, it's for us, it was like 2D animation.
Yeah.
And kids now are it's like a mix of 3D animation and live action is what they're into.
Yeah.
Like it's my son who is also 5. He's like he started wanting to watch live action TV, like not adult stuff, like Disney Channel, like there's
like the Y7 rating stuff.
Yeah. And like he's starting to watch that stuff, and like we were when we went to Disney World this year. We didn't have like, you know, we cut out Netflix and all. It's like, we're just going to watch what's on TV. We're not going to go on our phones and watch anything.
Right.
So it's like some like live action show on Disney Channel about a girl whose sister is actually her mom. It sucks me in too. But I don't
didn't
watch
catch that one yet.
Yeah, I don't watch it. Like I don't seek it out. But like he was like, I want to watch this, Dad. I'm like, okay. But yeah, he loves all that live action stuff now, which is just weird. But it makes me hopeful for another year or two when I actually can take him to the movies and see like comic book movies or Star Wars and stuff like that, where I can see the movies I want to see,
right?
And not none of this like Captain Baby Underpants or whatever.
Oh yeah, Captain. I'm unfamiliar with that film, but my son keeps saying Captain Underpants, so I guess it's a thing now that you validated it.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Is that from Lego Batman, or is that an actual?
No, it's.
I got so lost watching Lego. I'm like, none of this follows the universe.
Oh, but I loved it. It was such. It was
a fun movie.
It was a fun movie. That I did take Trey to see that. That was so much fun. A, it's Batman, and B, it was just, I don't know, a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, it was fun. I'll give him that.
All right, so I guess to bring it back into
10 years.
10 years of podcasting.
Toy Story 2 had just come out.
I'm really blown. My mind's blown that Toy Story's been out for 20 years.
Yeah, 20.
That's.
Can I give you a quick fact? Because
Yeah.
the last 10 years, the iPod is about 10 years old now.
Yeah.
And Steve Jobs, rest in peace. He's dead. I can say that.
That's true. There's
little known fact: he did not make his fortune on Apple. Apple almost went bankrupt and out of business. He was on the board of Pixar and made all his fortune when Disney bought Pixar.
Yeah, which is not to see where Apple is today, or even a couple of years ago when Jobs was still alive. Like it to think that there was a time where that company was going to go bankrupt is crazy, because it changed the way we talk on phones and the way we.
Yeah, we've always talked about this several times over the last 10 years of podcasting. Apple doesn't make the best product by any means, but they have the best marketing.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've gone, like, I used to be an Android person. I like, the nice thing Apple does is they keep it simple.
Yeah.
They keep it real simple, but I'm not a sheep. Like there's like the Apple sheeps.
The 7 and 8, it's the same thing. I better buy it.
Yeah. Like I have a 6, I think. So I'm sure by the time I buy a phone, it will be the 9, or 8C or S or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Because I try to buy phones when I need to, aka I dropped it and the screen broke.
Right.
That's where Apple gets you.
I almost bought a new phone 2 nights ago. We were talking about this before you started recording. Before all that happened, I told you I ended up rooting an Android the other day for the first time out of necessity because I was trying to make something work. And then I'm like, that was pretty easy to do. Let me try to root my Galaxy S7 with the Knox encryption on it. Well, long story short, I got stuck in a boot loop on my phone, and 4 hours later. I found like the original firmware. I was able to flash the original firmware back. I had to delete all my stuff though. I've had this phone since the 7 came out, so like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I've spent a year and a half like customizing every single aspect of my workflow.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, thankfully everything was in the cloud, so like it automatically populates back up. But nothing's customized. Like my font sizes aren't customized. I lost all the text messages I was saving, all those sex that I was getting from the legal girls. Legal, I said. I noticed like my voice did something right as I said it. And when I say legal, I mean like 21-year-olds, you know?
I feel like that would be a story we touch on.
All the good stuff because I don't send my sex to the cloud. I don't do that. I don't want them in the cloud.
That's how
keep them local.
Yeah, that's how J-Law got in trouble. Not in trouble, but she got outed. Outed?
Yeah. But long story short, don't try to root a phone with superior encryption on there.
Yeah, it's
But while that was happening, I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to break down, like, buy a new phone. I was like so close. It was like 10:25 at night, and I'm on the website. It's like order by 10:30 and get it by 10:30 in the morning. I'm like, might as well. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to buy the S8, which is $900.
Oh,
because 10 years ago, you get free phones.
Yeah,
sign a 2-year contract. We'll give you this phone for free.
Not anymore.
But now they figured the millennials, which unfortunately we're considered millennials, even though I feel we're above that.
Which is right. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on the border because
I came of age in the 90s. I feel millennials are people that came of age in the thousands.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I guess maybe like Gen Xers feel like they came up in the 80s.
I thought I was a Gen X.
That's
I'm a millennial.
I agree, and
Yeah.
I feel like the reason I say I'm on the fence is because like I'm old enough to remember like some of the 80s and the 90s,
Yeah.
but like I'm young enough to like know the technology and stuff. And then I'm also old enough to be like scared of like I'm at that age now where like Snapchat scares me. Like I don't know how to use that technology.
I thought it was just for porn, but apparently it's not. There's
No, like-
other stuff they make money somehow.
There's like Snapchat artists out there
Yeah.
that can
Snap
like
me.
Yeah.
I thought, like, you just call me on the phone.
I don't understand. Like, it's such a wild, popular social media. I just got comfortable with Twitter, like within the last year. Like to use it as like a personality for everything is awesome. Before that, like I've always been terrible at marketing my shows on you know. I used MySpace for so long. I'm a MySpace.
You got to market to millennials. Millennials are putting brick and mortar stores out of business. Restaurants. I just read an article like Olive Garden CEO says millennials like going to Olive Garden. No, they don't.
They get their blue
Nobody
apron.
likes going to Olive Garden. Fine Italian food. I'm Italian. Nothing is authentic that happens in Olive Garden.
They have a pretty good breadstick, though.
Yeah, the unlimited breadstick. Let me tell you about that. Because when you think Italian feast, you think, oh, you can eat bread. You go over, grandma's house as a kid, and she just makes breadsticks.
It's well, I mean, I go for when I go to Olive Garden, it's usually fettuccine Alfredo.
Okay.
And unlimited breadsticks.
Yeah. I mean, millennials are just, I don't even know how that came up, but they're just ruining everything. And
what I love reading on the internet is like I guess they say it's baby boomers versus millennials, like what baby boomers blame millennials for and what millennials blame baby boomers for. And like as like the guy who I don't feel like I'm definitely not a baby boomer.
Well, yeah.
You
did not grow up during the war.
Yeah. I identify myself as a Gen Xer, but I guess technically I'm a millennial.
We're millennials.
But I like to like just kind of like sit there and watch those arguments because they're just hilarious. And that's kind of what we sound like right now, blaming them for everything.
Yeah, I don't even know how that came up, but yeah, they ruined everything. And
well, it's
whatever we were talking about before. Just millennials are the reason for the downfall.
They're the reason that we're paying $900 for a phone.
Oh yeah, that's what. Yeah, millennials, they're okay with I'll just pay $25 for the next 4 years. That sounds reasonable. No, I'd rather just sign a 2-year contract and get the phone for free.
Yeah,
it
makes it easier because I mean I guess either way you're paying for that because you're paying more for if you sign a 2-year contract if they even offer them anymore. I don't even think
so because I think I wouldn't mind signing the contract because realistically I'm going to stay with my phone carrier for the next 2 years.
Yeah,
whatever.
I've been with AT&T for 5 years now.
Yeah.
What's going to happen in the next? If I were to sign a contract today, what's going to happen in the next 2 years that makes me say I'm leaving AT&T?
Yeah, but millennials, they don't mind spending $900 of their parents' money. So that's why I'm like stuck. I'm like, man, if I can't reflash this phone, because we all need a phone to live now.
Yeah,
it's not like 10 years ago when we started podcasting. Like you called me at home.
Yeah.
If I didn't pick up the phone, he must be out. Now it's like if you call me on the cell phone and I don't pick up, I get a text. Where are you?
Yep, it's I think the cell phone I had 10 years ago,
Nokia 5160,
was a flip phone.
Yeah. You had the 6160.
I had I don't remember the number. I had a Samsung flip phone.
Okay.
It was the first color screen
nice.
in there, and I was able to. I think I had a camera. It was like so I was able to take little grainy pictures with it.
Yeah.
It's funny if you watch Spider-Man 3. There's a scene that they lifted it for the trailer of some other Sony space movie that came out recently. I don't know what it was. But they lifted the scene and they edited a couple people out, but they left this one guy who's front and center. and whenever Spider-Man 3 came out, like, okay, he had a flip phone taking a picture. It made sense. But in 2017, he was, I think it was Passenger. Is that the Ryan Reynolds film? I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, that was Chris Pratt. I don't know. It was a Ryan Reynolds film and Jake Gyllenhaal, and they went to Mars and they found
and he did his Ryan Reynolds monologue that he does in every single movie. His monotone monologue.
And there's in 2017, here's this guy with his flip phone that they left front and center. I'm like, that's an odd choice to leave in.
Yeah, it's a little strange. I mean, man, 10 years ago, if you wanted your phone to vibrate when it rang, you had to buy the vibrating battery. Like, that was the thing I had to do.
I remember that on my old phones. Yeah, it's crazy how technology has changed, even just within the podcasting community.
Yeah, which we'll touch on
throughout
this
So
discussion that we're already 21 minutes into.
Yeah, and it's funny because we started a little later, and I was like, we're gonna have to trim some time here and there. So here we are.
Oh, we're going till midnight easily.
So, but yeah, so 10 years ago, and I remember I broke my ankle from wrestling. Not because of wrestling. I broke it from drinking. But
yes.
And then I guess somehow on social media, on MySpace, I guess, or maybe it was, I don't know if I had a Facebook 10 years ago. No, I did, because it says
Facebook was only open to like 6 schools.
Yeah, but I think 10, because I think I recently got a message saying you've been on Facebook for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I think like I joined Facebook right after Happy Hour with Steel Tip was on MySpace.
It was a big thing when like your school was accepted to Facebook because parents weren't on it. So it was like just full of like all slutty college girls.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. And Community College was not on it. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, slutty Facebook days.
But yeah, so on one of the social medias,
MySpace,
me said something about doing a podcast.
I think it was you.
And
you're like, this is what I want to do, and I think I replied then saying, hey, I've been kind of batting around that idea myself.
Yeah. And thus, Happy Hour with Steel Tip was born with
yay,
me and Jay as the hosts, you as the producer, and then a couple weeks in, Jonesy hopped on board.
Yay! And a lot of stuff that was 10 years ago. The iPod, as we just talked about, was almost a thing. So like we knew this is what we wanted to do, and it was really before podcasting was mainstream. So we're like, how do we do it?
Yeah,
like we really modeled it after radio.
Yeah.
Like on-demand radio, if that kind of makes sense.
Well, I want to say, like, our format was very Matt and Huggy from the YSP days here in Philly, where we had, like, the 5 to 10, 15-minute segments or whatever, and then a 5-minute break. And it was like, let's do entertainment news, let's do sports news, let's do this and that, and then our interview segment.
Yeah, it was more like radio because there was no real podcast that we could go off of. Like, it didn't really evolve till like a couple years after that, where it's like, hey, you can just talk for 6 minutes if that's what you want to do.
Yeah,
and somebody will listen to those 6 minutes. We felt we had to fill 2 hours.
Yeah, and it was and that first episode, which I want to air. I don't know if I'm going to air any of the actual show because it is a hard listen because I was in Maine.
Right. And I was in Philadelphia.
You were in Philly, and I guess Jay was in Levittown. So, and I was on hotel internet.
Well, that was also before internet was really...
Yeah, so internet was slow to begin with.
I think like you were lucky if you can get like 5 down, 1 up.
Yeah, slow internet. Still cable, still broadband. It's much faster than dial-up, but still slow compared to what we have today.
Well, Kev, dial-up was 56K. And I just said you can get 5 meg down. 5 meg is bigger than 56,000. Continue.
And it is just...
Oh, I'm sorry. Back to that internet. I just moved from from Topton. And when I lived in Topton, Pennsylvania, like one up and one down was like the thing. Like we have high speed internet now. It's one. I'm like, oh, this sounds reasonable. I can download a song in about 4 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
I get mad if it takes more than if it buffers for more than 2 seconds.
Exactly.
When I hit play.
Yeah. And same thing. Like that was our very first episode was remote podcasting, which is what I exclusively do now 10 years later.
But yeah, I don't want to say we're the best at what we do, but we were ahead of our time.
We were pioneers.
Yes, we were pioneers in the. We didn't know how. There was no software
there was not yet. I use Zencaster.
Right, which didn't even exist.
Nothing, and it's a web app that I can log into. It's basically Skype built into a website that records both sides of the conversation locally, uploads it to a Dropbox cloud folder, and then I get to mix it myself later.
We had to make up stuff as we went along.
You had 4 or 5 computers plugged.
Everything had to be a dedicated computer.
Yeah.
Vonage. I don't even know if Vonage is still a thing now, because the landline phone's a thing of the past. First of all.
Yeah.
Secondly, they force you to take a landline phone. Like when I got my Verizon Fios bundle.
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, it's for round number sake, it's $150 a month for the double play. Or you can get the triple play with the phone, which is $100. Like, wait, so I take the phone and you take $50 off my bill? Okay.
And it's like no one uses it. Like I think I have a landline number, but I don't know what it is. I use my cell phone for everything.
Yeah, exactly. So we use the Vonage soft phone.
Yes.
Where the technology was, I had to call you on one line, put you on hold, and then I guess call Jay on the second line because he was somewhere else. And then when he connected, then I can conference the three of us together.
Yeah.
So you guys, there was no mixing between you and Jay. Like you were, if he was louder than you, he was just louder than you because he was coming off the same machine. And that's what we did. And then that evolved. That first show was awful. And then I guess that evolved to the first show where we all sat down in the same room together.
Well, and I think that took a couple weeks because I remember at that point we said, okay, let's try. We have to make sure we record when I'm actually home.
Right.
So it was me, Jay.
You were traveling a lot.
Yeah, I was traveling for work. And Jay and I were in my kitchen, my living room, or my apartment kitchen, with 2 computers set up with, I want to say whatever Skype was back then. I don't know. I keep thinking Google Hangouts, but I guess that wasn't a thing back then.
That wasn't a thing.
But it was maybe it was Skype or it was
Gmail was probably invite only 10 years ago too.
It was, yeah, probably. And it was some sort of VoIP solution that wasn't the soft phone because we just logged in and voice chatted.
Magic Jack.
So I was listening to Jay through my headphones.
Was it AIM?
It may have been. If AIM had voice, it may have been. It was something along that line, though, because it was something that was instant messenger based that also offered voice.
Okay.
And so we did that in my living room for a week or two. Jonesy hopped in on an episode in there. And then we eventually just migrated to wherever you were living at the time. To all be in the same room. And that would probably took, I would say, we as we go down the story of Happy Hour, it was 18 weeks.
18 weeks, and I remember that. Because, well, I'm jumping ahead. I'll reveal how I know that later.
But it's, so I would say by week 8, within 2 months of the podcast, I think we eventually just moved into one room. And we recorded on Saturdays or something like Saturday mornings,
probably
because I wasn't wrestling anymore because my ankle was healed, but they went on to do bigger and better things, quote unquote. And I I was having my time was podcasting. That's what I wanted to do, and I was still using that persona of Steel Tip. It was Happy Hour Steel Tip. I was using my wrestling persona. A lot of our first ever guest on that first episode was Fat Baby Leg.
Right, he was a parody guy. He did educational. His parodies, I guess not really parodies. He made songs that were funny.
I don't know
history.
And I don't know if he was trying to be funny. Because I recently watched the video of him on whatever that show was on NBC
that he was promoting.
That was Travis Barker, right?
Yeah,
he was one of the judges,
Oh.
And he was doing Christopher Columbus on that show, and like they turned him down because he was awful.
Right.
But it was hilarious. It's one of the funniest songs. Like I still crack up listening to it.
And the way we did that interview, again, you were remote, and he was in California, most likely, and I was in Philadelphia. So I was just responsible for like putting you guys on this conference call together and recording it, because it wasn't recorded for the podcast. We recorded it separately and then put it into the show later.
Yes.
And that was probably the worst possible interview ever.
It was the fact that this show, I call Everything Is Awesome a long-form interview show, and it's really more conversation than interview. But the fact that like I do a show that's interview-based, like right now I'm going to cut in that Fat Baby Leg interview.
Now?
Boom.
All right, so let's get into this interview now. This is, like I said, the first interview conducted by Happy Hour with Steel Tip with Fat Baby Leg.
Fat Baby Leg here.
Hey, Fat Baby Leg, this is Steel Tip. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you? Yourself?
Oh, I could be better. I know. A little bit more sleep. So I see you got a few things here to promote, and I welcome you to the show. I thank you for doing the interview.
Oh, yes. No, it's great to be here. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. I got familiar with you overnight. I've heard of you before from a few of my friends on MySpace, but so I did a little bit of homework. And my first question actually is, where'd you come up with the name?
The name comes from an old Olmec tradition. How when the first male baby was born, if one of its legs was fatter than the other one, that would mean that he'd be a strong and virile son, and there would be a good harvest that year. And I just thought I just wanted my work to embody that principle.
Excellent. Let's see. Looking at my notes here, I actually did a little research on your website, fatbabyleg.com.
That's it.
And, I was just kind of searching through, and I see that, one of your little fast facts here was something about you meeting the croc hunter.
Yes, true.
Tell me about that, man.
That was, I was probably 6-7 years ago, and I was just in Australia, and he just happened to be at the same restaurant I was at, and I just went over and introduced myself, and he's just a great guy, real nice, and just, he didn't seem bothered or anything, because I'm a huge fan of his, his show is just amazing entertainment.
Yeah, I read that, and I was like, wow, I don't think I ever heard anyone meeting him, like, that I would actually be talking to one day.
Yeah, he's just like the character, he's the same person. That's who he portrays on TV.
Let's see. Let's see here, you were on NBC Star Tomorrow.
That is correct.
What was that all about?
That was a reality show trying to find the next big band. And they had a producer, established music producer by the name of Dave Foster, and a rotating chair of judges. And Travis Barker was a judge when I went on. And I didn't make the initial cut, so I didn't get to go on. And I don't know really what happened after that. I stopped paying attention.
Okay, because I don't remember hearing that show, so...
Yeah, I think it was mainly on the Internet, but the first show was on TV, and you can see that clip on my MySpace, and I think it's just on my MySpace. I don't know if it's on fatbabyleg.com or not.
And your MySpace is myspace.com/fatbabyleg.
That is correct.
So our listeners can go watch that.
Yes,
and then you got a CD here called Theology and Geometry. God, can't talk today. Geometry.
Yes.
Yes. And when did you come out with that?
It got a burn or ran right off the press like in May, because I was up in Philadelphia for the Kid Grist birthday show at the beginning of May. So I brought the CD there, but now I finally put it up online so people can order it online. And anytime you see me perform, I have some copies for people to purchase.
And just purchase it through your website?
I think it's just on MySpace right now. I don't know if the website is not set up. I think it's on my blog on MySpace.
Okay. And I gotta say, I listened to I think I got a sample of 4 of your songs. Meet Christopher Columbus by far is one of the. I got a chuckle out of it. I really liked it.
Well, thank you. I'm glad.
And And I hope you have any shows coming back to the East Coast anytime soon.
Not soon. I will eventually. I don't know when. It's just hard. Just the logistics and just too expensive going back there, and I didn't fill enough CDs. So if people buy my CDs, I'll be back a lot sooner. But I will come back. I just don't know when right now.
Dude, next time you're in town, you got to give our producer a call. See if maybe we can set something up in studio or something.
Yeah, totally.
But totally, let's just remind our listeners to check out your website, fatbabyleg.com. You can also find you on MySpace at fatbabyleg. And let's get this CD purchased on the East Coast, Theology and Geometry. And we'll push it as much as we can.
I appreciate it, brother.
All right, and again, thanks for doing our show.
No, thanks for having me.
No problem. You have a good day.
All right, you too. Cheers.
Bye.
All right, so that
Fat Baby Leg.
Fat Baby Leg. You can check out his MySpace at myspace.com/fatbabyleg, or his website, which I believe is fatbabyleg.com. Santoro, if you can.
I think that's what you said in the interview.
Warriors, Wizards, One Shot! Over at Kickstarter.com, the One Shot Podcast Network is currently funding the first season of The Dungeon Dome, an actual play experience that combines the style of professional wrestling with the storytelling power of Dungeons and Dragons. Performers will take on the roles of fantasy gladiators, battling it out in player versus player matches for wealth and glory. The Dungeon Dome will feature some of your favorite actual play performers, including Kat Cool of the Campaign Podcast, Mike Migdal of the Neo Scum, Pat O'Rourke of the Dungeon Rats Podcast, and Aram Farshin of God's Fall. But we can't make this project without your help, so head over to Kickstarter right now and look up The Dungeon Dome. $25 get you a seat, but you'll only need the edge.
And we're back. And that was the awful interview I did. And I put no blame on Fat Baby Leg.
That was your fault. It was 100% your fault.
I wish that we still had contact info for him, because I would love to get him back on the show.
I don't know. Maybe I do.
If you do, you need to forward that to me, because I would
What's
love
his real
to talk
name?
to him. I don't know. I can't find. The only thing I can find about this guy is old YouTube videos and a MySpace page.
Ugh.
I can't find him anywhere. But yeah, I mean, as you heard, that interview was basically me asking, I had a list of 10 questions.
Right.
And he'd answer one, and instead of me...
You weren't listening to him. No. You were just asking your question. We could have pre-recorded you asking 10 questions, which later became a bit on the Stabcast, which we'll talk about. Oh, man, I forgot all about that, yeah. But it was literally, you would ask him something, and he's done several interviews in his life. He would set you up oh, yeah, well, that's a good story there, and let me tell you about it. And then he'd set you up to talk about something else, but then you didn't ask his follow-up.
Yeah, I would ask him about how he got started in the business, and he had a really awesome story.
Yeah, it's a great story, which brings us up to today. You're like, cool, you had a pet when you grew up, right? Yes, I had a dog, and the dog's actually responsible for the newest song I just wrote. Instead of, hey, what's that new song? Great. Where did you go to high school? Those weren't the questions. But,
yeah, you guys heard the questions, but it's nuts that's how and every podcast has those growing pains, but
yeah.
It was just an awkward interview.
It was more or less the technology. We learned what to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. As we said, we kind of were ahead of the time, pioneers. Trying to figure out how to do remote podcasting, how to do a podcast in general, because podcasts were certainly around. I was listening to Kevin Smith's podcast
Right.
at the time. I think Ricky Gervais had a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So there were other podcasters out there,
but it wasn't
mainstream.
Consumer grade.
Yeah. It was you were a millennial.
Yeah, it wasn't anyone can do it now.
Yeah, you had to be hip to podcasts to be able to listen to it, or just be I was a super fan of Kevin Smith, so he talked about it, so I knew that I'm going to listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we had listeners was shocking, because it was even learning how to market it
Right.
10 years ago. Like
Nobody knew what it was 10 years ago.
Like
you didn't have a phone that played them.
Yeah, you
couldn't
had
get a
to
device that played these things.
I mean, I think by the time we started Happy Hour, like officially, we may have talked about it before an iPod existed, but by the time Happy Hour started, I was able to connect my iPod to my computer, subscribe through iTunes on the computer, and upload them to my iPod, and then take them in the car or to the gym or wherever. But like literally, like back then, like it was, let me listen to these 2 or 3 podcasts. One of them is my own. It was a lot of like downloading, like I would download the Kid Chris, Matt and Huggy, like the YSB guys offered a podcast version, or a webcast version of their shows. That's what you had back then.
Yeah, I mean, there was no phone you can get it on now. Everything's on a phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, and I know this because the Stabcast logo is let's be honest, it's an iPod. We always called it a nondescript MP3 player. It was an iPod. And because it wasn't a picture of a phone, it wasn't a computer, it was an iPod because that's what people had then.
Yeah,
and it was so hard to market it because I'm just like throwing things around near the microphone. I want to kick my foot up on this chair. Feel free to kick your feet up on the sofa there, like you did last time you were in this room.
Yeah, I was thinking that or the table where people put their drinks.
Yeah.
Might be more appropriate.
There you go. Now your feet are up on the table. Perfect. You need new shoes, by the way. You got no traction on those, but anyway.
That's fine.
So we finally moved into one room. We added Jonesy to the mix, and then we were marketing it, and we were getting people on the show, which was always a challenge because just to explain to them what it was, what this podcast was, and then getting them on the phone was a challenge because the technology didn't really exist then.
Yeah, and to say like, hey, you couldn't say be on my radio show because then they say, oh, what station is it on? Well, it's on the internet. It's not a real radio. So yeah,
I feel it was better explained as a radio show because nobody knew what podcasting was really.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where now like it's not unheard of to get a big name guest on your show.
Right.
I mean, for me it is. It's happened once or twice.
Wait, I'm not a big name guest.
But it's like who was? I think Harrison Ford was on The Nerdist.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he was on your show.
Oh God, I wish. I'm talking to a guy who may end up booking some special guests because I hate booking guests. So I'm talking to a guy that might end up doing it for me.
Talking to a guy that knows a guy.
Who knows a guy?
Who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows Kevin Bacon. So he may be on the show. See what I did there?
I have I do. I see what you did. So I have this wish list and I said, for the heck of it, I'll throw Harrison Ford on there.
Okay.
Never going to happen. But anyway, yeah, it's now you can go up to somebody, a celebrity, and say, hey, will you be a guest on my podcast?
Everyone knows what that is.
And they know what that is now. 10 years ago, they didn't.
Absolutely not.
10 years ago, which is one of the, the last month of Happy Hour with Steel Tip, we did a live show, which again, unheard of.
Yeah, we were pioneers again. We had to figure out how to do this, how to pitch this live show, first of all.
Because did they ask us, because it was Shannon Cole, the Shannon Cole band, whatever her name of the band was, they put on a show at Doc Watson's?
They were hosting an open mic situation, and I guess the band's manager, I guess we'll call him, was hosting an open mic, so of course his band was booked, the band that he was marketing.
Yes.
And I believe he asked us to be a part of it somehow because we were like, I don't know, talking to them. I guess we became friends from the show.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, can you guys come and do something? We're like, yeah, we don't really know how this is going to work. Like, because you're going to have to put acts on in between what we're doing.
It was like we were emceeing the event.
Yeah,
almost.
Okay.
And I was on mic, Jay was on mic. I think you and Jones, I think all four of us were on mic. We ended up giving away Happy Hour Steel Tip T-shirts, which I still have mine to this day.
I have mine. I sent you a picture of it.
Yeah.
I have one autographed by Jonesy and Bruce W.
I have
Long story.
The thing that I had autographed with you and I had you and Jonesy autograph something.
The Stabcast shirt?
No, it
Oh,
was
no.
a happy
Yeah.
hour shirt I had framed, and I had for some reason I had you guys sign the glass, not the shirt. So
Right.
the glass broke, and the signatures are gone.
Oh, you'll never get Jonesy's signature. Rest in peace, Jonesy.
So, but we are emceeing the event. We did like a live habanero pepper eating contest thing.
Yeah.
Where it made Matthew Herb from Robots and Race Cars, and I don't know what he's up to today. Former Stabcast host.
What he's up to today is sitting in his house with his wife. His gifted house.
Oh.
Mother-in-law gave him a house.
What?
When she moved to Florida, yeah. Or she moved up north, rather. I'm sorry.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
But the I don't want to get into
Yeah,
this.
habanero pepper eating contest. Like he ended up going to the bathroom puking after he won.
Yeah.
It was just like I mean I don't remember it because it was just about 10 years ago.
Oh, blur, yeah. I remember none of this.
And it was still like I don't think anyone. I think we could go on record as saying we did the first live podcast because I don't think anyone did them back then. I know for sure, like Smodcast did it, Kevin Smith's podcast did it. He didn't start that until like maybe in 08 or 09.
Well, it was bulky technology. It was before you had to bring a computer out to record this thing.
Yeah.
It was before you can record on consoles, record on an iPad.
Yeah.
Just it wasn't easy to do.
It was because I think not only was there whatever setup Joe Kaliva, who was running the
for his band,
but you also had our setup. Like
we were
table.
essentially another act, yeah.
Yeah, so
that had to patch into the Doc Watson's PA system.
Yeah, so it was like a crazy, wild setup for. I haven't done anything. I've done live shows, obviously, since then, and they're way more convenient, way easier to set up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just crazy. And then we did a couple more shows, and
well, that was show 16.
That was show 16. So we know the number now. So that means there was literally I think 2 more shows.
Then we did 17 and 18. But what we did there too, Jonesy and I performed together.
Oh yeah.
The show was really you and Jay. Jonesy and I were kind of behind the scenes on the show, and that was the first we decided to perform. We booked ourselves. This was hard to do. It was the MySpace days. We had to come up with enough fake music to make it look like we were an actual band called the Revolutionary War Soldiers, trws.info.
Which is that still a website?
No.
Oh my god. But
maybe on MySpace you can find the Revolutionary War Soldiers.
I think you can. I think I mean not anytime recently, but within the last couple of years, I think I searched it for some reason. And I got to say, like before you go, like this is such a genius bit.
It was.
It's such a genius
bit. Yeah, we booked ourselves as a real band. And, no pictures or anything. And it was believable enough where we got put on this show. And then we get up there and we played it off like we were Revolutionary War Soldiers. The banter in between songs would be, hey, we're close to Valley Forge, a lot of history there. Valley Forge the bit was always, we would point to a different, Valley Forge is about 20 miles that way. No, I think it's 20 miles that way and point to a different direction. For the listening audience, that's what I'm doing. I'm pointing. But that was the running bit, and it would be like, here's our first song, and it would be like 4 bars of some kind of intro, whatever it was, and then the Reading Rainbow theme, word for word. Butterfly in the sky, fly twice as high, take a look, it's in a book, Reading Rainbow, Reading Rainbow. The song would end, and then we would act like that just didn't happen. Wow, that was a good song. Yeah, it was. This next song is about the tyranny that happened when we're fighting the Redcoats. We're so close to Valley Forge. A lot of history there. It's about 20 miles that way. No, it's 20 miles that way. Anyway, this is about that tyranny that we faced. Reading Rainbow theme again. Or, 4 bars of an actual song, then Reading Rainbow. And then, the songs were... And then we're like, okay, we're going to play a cover song for our last song. A lot of people know this. And, the song names, too, were like the Boston Tea Party was a song name. Yeah. The Redcoats Were Coming, or another song name. No Taxation Without Fair Representation was another song. Meaningless songs that we had to put on the MySpace to make it look like we were a real band. It was like, no taxation without fair representation, instrumental only demo. Because we didn't write words for it, so we didn't record the words. But then we were like, oh, here's our last song. And it was the opening to Weezer Hash Pipe, just the intro, the da-na-na-na-na.
Yeah.
And then Reading Rainbow theme.
All right. We have a very special duo up on stage with us. Anyway, everyone put your hands together for the Revolutionary War soldiers.
Hang on, Santoro's musket is misfiring right now.
I was just fooling around before. I know who we are. Who are we? We are the Revolutionary War soldiers. For those of you that don't know, we're from Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. A lot of history there. Tons of history there. It's about 20 miles that way. A lot of everyone out. 20 miles out. Okay. So, a lot of our songs are historically charged. Hopefully you'll learn a thing or two. I will! Sorry. This is like Schoolhouse Rock, except more obnoxious. Whoops. Alright, our first song's called The Boston Teabagger. He's not alone. He's got Santoro Jones. He's the host because he talks the most. It's happy hour. And hug anyone. You know where to go. Download the show. It's happy hour. That guy right back there with the headphones on. Cause he drinks God's blood. Happy hour. Happy hour. Happy hour. Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Yeah.
Take it off!
Maybe later. We have, looks like we have 7 or 8 more songs, so, that's not a joke, guys. That's not a joke.
You don't win a war with 3 songs.
No, you don't. Yeah, like Daniel was saying, Fight the Power is the name of the CD.
And the name of this next song. It's a lot heavier than the last one.
Yeah, first time we're ever playing it, too, so. Hopefully we don't screw up here.
Still to the star alone. He's got Santoro Jones. He's the host because he talks the most. Happy hour. You know where to go. Download the show. It's happy hour. We'll out-drink everyone. Even Joe.
Seriously, that guy right back there, now he's looking at us, wearing the Happy Hour with Steel Tip shirt. Buy the Cosmo after the show.
Cause it drinks Cosmos. It's happy hour. Happy hour. Happy hour. Don't take our word for it. Not bad for a first time ever playing that. That's all out in public.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm out of breath up here.
Fight the real power.
Fight the real power.
Oppressive British pigs.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but no, I think we need to move this along because we already let him in on the secret. We actually came here. We do play a couple songs on the side.
We do some parodies. We do some covers. We got a cover here for you now.
Yeah, everyone knows it's a sing along. It's Weezer Hash Pipe.
He's not alone. He's got Santoro Jones. He's the host because he talks the most. It's happy hour. We can hug anyone. You know where to go. Download the show. It's happy hour. We'll out-drink everyone. Even Joe.
Not
not sure if you guys know yet. Joe, raise your hand back there for him. Is that guy saying, I'm not doing it again? Black shirt, jeans, wearing Airwalk sneakers. I'm not sure why. He's not really a skater, though. He's got an Eagles hat on. Yeah, and he's not 16, so I don't know why he's wearing Airwalks. But seriously, buy him a Cosmo. Any complaints about us? He booked us tonight. Go see that guy.
Because the Drinks Cosmos, it's happy hour. Happy hour. Happy hour. But don't take our word for it. I got my hash pipe.
It was such a genius bit, and I remember. I don't know. You guys told me at some point because like
I don't think we even told you what we were gonna do.
at some point you did because like you guys had to walk away.
Yeah,
like,
hey, we're gonna leave you.
I had to man the stations. I think it was like maybe the day of. Or,
yeah, because you had to, because I wasn't there to cue whatever was happening on your show afterwards.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to like hit these buttons and make stuff work.
Yeah, that was such a like to
the
this
looks
day.
on people's faces as we, the first time it's like, huh, okay. Then it was like halfway through the Reading Rainbow theme the second time, just like the looks of disbelief on everyone's jaw was dropped in that place. And then the third time we did it, it was mixed. A lot of people were it was 50-50. They were either laughing or booing us at that point.
It was, to me, it's a genius bit. Like I don't know. It's that comedy rule of three.
That's why it was longer than every time we rehearsed it. I think we were told we had like 4 or 5 minutes because it was an open mic scenario.
Yeah.
We rehearsed it. It was like 2-3 minutes. We're like, oh, yeah, maybe it'll be a little longer. I think we were 15 minutes, like insanely long. It went on forever up there.
Well worth it for what I remember.
Yeah, it was funny though.
Well worth it. And yeah, so we did a couple more weeks of the show, and then
2 more weeks. Then I don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah, it's funny because like the only thing I remember is like waking up that Saturday morning. And I don't know if you had sent a message or not, but like I know if you did, I replied. If you didn't, I just sent you a message saying I'm not doing the show today.
There's something that happened where, and even like a year after it happened, I can't put my finger on what exactly happened.
No, like we
just stopped recording one day.
It was just, I mean, it was egos, and I know like at some point, like when I after you went off, and we'll get to more details of where we split, but you went off to do Stabcast with Jonesy. Jay and I went to
Rest
go
in
do
peace.
Creep.
Stabcast and Jonesy.
Jay and
They're
I
buried together.
Jay and I went to go do Creepcast, and eventually that turned into another version of Happy Hour, and that's when I started talking to Jonesy again, and and then started talking to you, and like when I started talking to you, like I told you, I was like, listen, I don't know exactly, like I definitely messed up, I my ego got in the way. It was like just we were in our 20s, like it was. I was 22 at the time, so like I don't name one 22-year-old that doesn't have like an ego, So it was
that kid on that religious show. He seems down to earth.
Yeah, he's fun. That's the one kid. Yeah, so I don't know like and I don't know if I could even find out because like any of the emails that I have that are associated with that are like either the email account doesn't exist anymore,
right,
or I don't have the emails.
The Happy Hour server is gone. The computer failed. And it's one of those blade drives that I don't know how to operate.
So,
you asked me a while back, like, do you have this? I'm like, it's on a hard. You can have the hard drive. I don't know how to install it anywhere.
Well, what's great is because before Jonesy RIP'd, he had a lot of the original stuff. So I finally found it. Hence the reason that I'm able to cut some stuff in here and there. But nothing. I have no record of what officially happened.
Something happened.
Ego, something was like egos were bruised.
It was the Revolutionary War soldiers in the demise.
And then you guys instantly went to start within a week, right?
We recorded show 18. We were supposed to record show 19. I think Jonesy showed up, so it was just like Jonesy and me sitting there.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, Happy Hour's done. What can we do? And I remember it's 19 because our password we went on to record this, to do the Stabcast, which 8 years later, I remembered it was 19 because our password for all the Stabcast stuff early on was hiatus 19 as a joke. So that's how I remember we did exactly 18 weeks and took a hiatus on 19.
And so you guys, and how long? Because so by the time you guys were,
We took a week off.
You took a week off. Then I for whatever reason have a thing with numbers. We started Happy Hour on July 1. I wanted to start Creepcast on January 1 of 2008.
Well, the last Happy Hour was November 11th was week 19.
Yeah.
And then November 18th was week 1 of Stabcast.
So, and it was about 5 weeks later when we debuted Creepcast.
Mm-hmm.
So how long? Because I know Jonesy actually is he the lowest running co-host of the show, or was that Bruce W?
Jonesy did well. For those that don't know, the Stabcast we did 384 shows, give or take, and which is it was exactly 8 years of shows, and Jonesy started the show with me. He maybe did 36 shows.
Okay.
Gosh, all this was on when we did show either 200 or 300, probably 200. We had a quiz. Our friend Andrew Zarian, who's big in the podcasting community now, I guess, for the prosumer level.
Yeah.
He called in the show, and he gave whoever was on the show that day, I guess Matthew, me, I don't know if you were there.
I was there. I was there for the 200th for sure.
We did a quiz.
Yeah.
He had a Stabcast history quiz, and even I didn't know the answers. We had somebody else in the mix back when we had a staff of people, which we'll get to later, make this quiz up. And one of the questions was, who has hosted the least number of shows? And I can't remember. Jonesy did about 36 shows before he passed. And I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh. Tragic incident. And he did about 36 shows with Jonesy and me. But that's, we were still a little ahead of the time because we learned what to do and kind of what not to do on Happy Hour.
Yeah, yeah.
But we knew, okay, we have this podcast. We got to market it now. So we focused on getting local bands.
Yeah.
There was a high school aged music venue in the city, in town rather. And we would go there and find out who the popular bands were. And we're like, hey, do you want to come on the show? Thinking that if we get this band on, the band's fans are going to listen to the show, then we'll rope them in from there. So we knew that's how we wanted to market this thing. And then the phone technology was a little bit better then. We were still probably doing that voice over IP stuff.
Yeah, because that was still around when I joined the Stabcast.
Yeah. And so we did that still. Well, we really knew this is what we want to market it as. We kind of learned a couple things. We were still ahead of our time in the sense where we didn't touch on this during Happy Hour, but when we had to post these shows, which were every Saturday at midnight, during the Happy Hour days, somebody had to be up Saturday at midnight to upload the new files.
Yeah.
With Stabcast, there was no WordPress. There was no content management system that was mainstream back then. We had to learn Linux programming,
which is
make
crazy.
a cron job on the server, and we would publish the files in a private directory, not in the HTML folder, and then have it transfer to HTML.
Yeah,
it's just a mess.
And it's because now that you mentioned that, I thought I had was manually post everything for Creepcast. But there's no way I was waking up at midnight and doing it. I had to have done something similar because I know myself. And I thought I swear that when I was thinking about the history of this show, or not this show, but me podcasting, I swear I was manually doing it. But there's no way. Because at that point, when I started Creepcast in 08, I was the one doing everything. All Jay did, it was Jay. See, we didn't learn anything from Happy Hour.
Okay, Jonesy and I learned something.
I still wanted that group of a group, which felt like a radio show. So it was me, Jay.
I just thought of a joke. So you know how I don't even know now where I'm going. Gosh, I wish I would have written this joke down. You know, how a group of fish is called a school, for example. A group of podcasters in a room is called a clusterfuck. I should have set it up a little bit better. A group of fish is called a school. A group of, I don't know, this animal's called
Yeah.
this, group of this is called this, and I should have said the
That's
podcasters in a room is called a clusterfuck.
100% accurate.
I can curse, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that couldn't be more accurate. And honestly, that's not a lesson I learned until I started doing Stabcast. So like,
Stabcast was two people, Jonesy and me.
yeah, it was you and Jonesy, then you and Bruce W.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
yeah.
So, but it started out with you two. Meanwhile, Creepcast was
what you and Jay went on to do after
me
the
and
Happy
Jay,
Hour.
but I still built a team around it. And it was Fox was actually part of it initially for that first week, maybe 2 weeks. And I remember we got Milo Turk on as one of our early guests, and Fox was there for it, and it was a train wreck. It was not like a bad train wreck, but it was. I mean, people laughed. I don't know if Turk laughed, but we all laughed. But Fox was part of it for a while. Waski was part of it for a while, and John Redding was part of it.
Okay.
Fox eventually kind of bowed
So you
out.
had a team of people.
But there was a team. There was 4 of us. Ultimately, it was like usually 4 of us and whatnot.
I think I caught 1 or 2 of those Creepcasts. I'm not a big podcast guy. I don't listen to anything. I leave here and I read.
And that is to this day, those, and I think ironically, that lasted 20 weeks, Creepcast, because I saw what I dubbed Creepcast Season 2 started episode 21.
Okay.
Which is a completely different cast. But that lasted about 20 weeks. And that is the only 20 episodes of my podcasting career I do not have. Like they're just missing. Like if anyone that's listening now listen to that garbage and you have it, please let me know. Because it is the only thing I'm missing, and which is the only thing that upsets me about that is that there's one episode that I did with my uncle when I went on vacation, and my uncle he passed last year, so that's the only episode I really like. I'm like shit, like I can't buy it. But anyway, yeah, we started the Creepcast show.
When Jonesy and I started, we had Stabcast first.
Yeah,
moved on.
yeah,
The technology was about the same though for both, because it was so quick for a Stabcast to Happy Hour. There was 1 week in between them.
Yeah.
So we're still 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah,
Nothing really changed.
Yeah, I mean, we were 5 weeks after you.
Yeah.
And I had to go buy a mixer and set up computers. Luckily, I was in a position where like the job I had was recycling computers all the time, aka you throw in the Hess dumpster or throw them in Kev's backseat.
Yeah.
So like all the computers that we needed to make things happen, like record the audio, patch in a guest, which I don't even know. I think at that point, Skype had numbers. Like you could pay for a Skype number. And I think that's how we did. We didn't, because I didn't have Vonage. I didn't use that. If we had a calling guest, there was no way back then to patch in a cell phone.
Right.
To at least that I knew, because I'm still like
the iPhone wasn't out. It wasn't a thing.
There were smartphones out, but like not like I think I had the G1 back then.
Right.
So you could maybe patch. Like I think there was a way you could patch it in to
Jonesy
play
and
stuff.
I had Blackberries.
Yeah, there was. I don't think there was a way. There was a way for us to hear the guests, but there was no way for the guests to hear us, at least at a good quality. So I think I used Skype with a VoIP number. Is how we did our interviews. And we like Creepcast. We named all because of the initial interview we did on Happy Hour with Shannon Cole.
Right, you'd played off of that.
Yeah, we played off of that. And how did Stabcast come about? I feel like this had something to do.
Well, it's funny because when you stopped recording, when whatever happened, we still don't know what happened to this day. There was somehow there was bad blood in our camps, and I'll say my camp being Jonesy and me, me being in charge of that team, I guess.
Yeah.
And then your camp being you in charge of all those other guys.
Those clusterfucks.
Yeah. You were the leader of the clusterfuck group. And somehow there was bad blood between us. And when your camp found out that Jonesy and I were going to immediately start this next show, because I think we posted something about it maybe, somehow you guys found out before we had a name for it. And one of your guys on the show it was like, oh, you should call it this. And it was like a bunch of things that were like, they're stabbing us at the back. They fucked us over, stuff like this. And Jonesy just kind of looked at me. He's like, why don't we just call it Stabcast? A play off of what he's, the ultimate fuck you to this guy. And because there was some bad blood there. Like, we were getting voicemails that were very derogatory.
I love the idea of a good old radio war.
Absolutely.
A good old, and in these terms, a podcast war. I would love to have a podcast war.
We had one on Stabcast, which I'm jumping ahead on now.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember that.
Yeah, I'll touch on it. Okay. I still have one other person to mention on that show before I get to you.
But the podcast war between Stabcast and Creepcast was not friendly.
It wasn't public, so it wasn't.
Because it was everything that happened. Like, I didn't play anything that was left on our voicemail system.
Yeah.
You guys didn't play anything that was left.
We would get voicemails like, "Hey, this bad thing happened to this guy. Let's make fun of it."
Yeah, and that was something that I had no idea about. And then there was the one the voicemails. I don't know if they were on our side, if they were ever directed towards me, except for one. And I think it was the last one where I was like, all right, this is what's going on here. Yeah. And that's what, I don't know if it was you and me or you or me and Jonesy, but there was like one or two emails shot back and forth about like, hey, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, this is what's happening. I was like, all right, see, I had no idea like that was happening. And
because Jonesy never heard the really bad one.
Yeah. And like, because, my Mike D'Angelo, who is a frequent contributor to what I do with the podcast world.
Is he coming today?
He's not coming today. He left a voicemail that we're going to play sometime during the show. But he was in a similar situation as Jonesy,
right.
So there was like when that happened, I was like, when I found out about it, when you told me about it, I was like, all right, I'll handle that, because that's not something, that's a line that I wasn't willing to cross, because my best friend went through that, and like I would believe that Jonesy and I were still like when that happened to Jonesy, I think we were still talking. Like Happy Hour, I don't think had quit at that point. I don't know when it happened, but regardless, like that was a line that I wasn't willing to cross. Like that was the one line that like I was not willing to cross, and other people in my camp did.
Yeah.
And that war ended, and you're right. It wasn't a fun war because it wasn't anything we could publicly play.
Mm-hmm.
But then,
what happened after Creepcast for you?
Creepcast ended 20 weeks in, and honestly, I didn't do anything until November of 2008. So 20 weeks is what, like, it's about 5 months.
Well, I guess the big thing then that we did next with Stabcast, after Jonesy, passed, I had to come up with a new co-host. So I got Bruce W., which, if you know this guy, he fits the mold for an emo kid. He's just...
Yeah.
You put him on a stage, and he looks like a young guy that girls want to look at. Perfect.
Yeah. He is the poster boy, and I've never met him. I've only seen him in video or in picture or on social media, but like he is that like poster boy, like emo. I feel like when I say emo kid, it feels dirty. It feels like I'm like it's a derogatory word, but
the way he had his hair, covering the one eye, so he had no depth of perception.
But that was just the way kids did it. Like that's a millennial. He's a goddamn millennial.
Well, yeah, but he fits the mold. You put him in front of girls. Girls are going to look at him.
Yeah.
So he joined the team because we knew him from, I guess, Happy Hour days, and more so in Stabcast. Because in Stabcast, we really focused on the bands and getting the bands involved in the show. And, gosh, that was the first show I had to ever write for, too. We had segments. We would do an intro, then Jonesy would have 15 minutes of his own time. I'd do 15 minutes. Then we do like a community thing. Then maybe we each do 15 minutes again. But anyway, so Bruce got on board, and he's like, hey, there's this website called Stickcam. I think we should check this out. Now, at the time, we had, HD wasn't really a thing. Stickcam was a live video streaming site. So now we had to figure out how to get video of us, record the audio on one machine, put the audio on the video to another machine, and make it look good.
And this is probably mid 2008 at this point. Because I stopped in May of 2008 and didn't start again until November. So, or November-ish at least. And
we were probably 1 year after we started.
Yeah.
19 weeks of happy hour. Then Jonesy did about 34. So we're about 54, 55 weeks in right now. So just after a year, 9 years ago, let's say.
Yeah. And I don't know where I was going with that, so I'll let you continue. It's your story.
So we're 9 years. So we still had to figure out how to do all this stuff, and it was grainy. It looked like grainy security camera footage, but it was enough where you could see Bruce standing next to me.
Yeah.
So we would center him, and I'd kind of like be out of the frame, and but yeah, we were just sitting there one day and doing the regular show, which was just bullshitting. Not really doing much of anything. Bruce was telling a joke or something. And then this guy hops in the room and sends us a private message on Stickcam. He's like, "Hey, can I feature you guys on my website?" Yeah, whatever. Make fun of the guy for a while. Oh, fucking kid. Yeah, some website you run. Yeah, feature us on your MySpace page. Next thing you know, we go from like 12 people in the room just kind of watching to 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I'm like, huh, what happened here? It's like, yeah, I just featured you on Stickcam, my website that I'm an admin on. And that was actually Matthew L., good guy over at Stickcam.
And that at that time, and I would say, even when I joined the Stabcast, which we'd say if that was around, episode 35, 36 that you started doing Stickcam, like about 50 episodes later is when I hopped in. So especially when you guys started it, but like that was original for Stickcam. Like there wasn't many. Like it was Stickcam was, from what I can gather, just like I've recently read some history on it and just kind of remembering what other things were doing. Like really, I only remember maybe a handful of actual podcasts on Stickcam.
Right, they were just then starting to look for original content to put on Stickcam, which was
instead of emo kids.
The start of their demise, essentially, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, so that opened up a whole new medium for us, because instead of sitting in a room talking to each other and trying to figure out what to do, and I don't want to say anything was scripted, but you kind of, before you came in for the day, you kind of knew where you wanted to go with things.
Yeah.
So now we're in front of an audience with 1,000 people watching us.
Yeah.
Basically yelling at you to dance like a monk. Dance for us.
Yeah.
That was funny. Tell that joke again.
Yeah.
What is this?
Well, and that's something that we didn't touch on at all, is that, and I did this even when I was on Stickcam with Happy Hour. We did outlines. We had outlines that gave us like our bullet points that we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, when I did go to Stickcam for Happy Hour, it became a looser timeline.
Right.
It was more about, let's make sure we hit our commercials and hit our segment topics versus like our actual bullet points.
Yeah, and some stuff you'd wait on too, like, hey, I know this is going to be huge. Let me wait till a couple more people are in the room here.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, like you said, we didn't script Happy Hour or Stabcast and Creepcast, but it was very much like we knew what we were going to talk about. Yeah. So it was that was the beauty of a podcast back then, and I guess still is today, is that it can be a well-organized, scripted version of radio.
Yeah.
But Stickcam changed that all.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, when Bruce said that, and thankfully, it was, I always joke about it. It was the right joke at the right time in front of the right person, and then we're doing this show for thousands of people live all of a sudden, so now it kind of means something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were getting the listeners before, but it's like, wow, these people are in front of us now. And now you got to worry about doing a show for them, but at the same time, somebody's going to download this later, so it has to make sense for them, too.
It is, and it's something that I think even to this day that, like, and we haven't really even gotten to me joining the Stickcam era yet, but, that was, I would say, Stickcam took up most of my podcasting career out of the last, 10 years. So I basically treat my shows like that now. It's obviously less interaction with the crowd and more interaction between me and the guest. But editing kind of went out the door.
There was no editing once you're doing a live show.
Yeah, because
a live audience.
You've already dropped whatever you wanted to say. I mean, unless it was something truly horrendous or something that like legally you had to cut out.
Yeah.
It was you don't edit. Like that's something that I don't. I make sure the levels are good, and then I produce it together. I mix it together. That's what editing is for me. And that's like, I think for me, I think is like the greatest thing I learned from Stickcam because like who cares at the end of the day? Like no one cares.
Because that's really your audience right there, and they don't care.
Yeah,
I think it's funny.
Yeah, and I don't think it is kind of weird with that audio, like the audio only balance, because not only is Stickcam video or is live, but it's video as well. So like so now you're doing a live visual medium.
And there's people typing at the same time too.
So it's all this. It's interaction. It's live. It's video based, and you also have to cater to the people who are going to download later.
Yeah.
Which was I would say to this day I don't know that I necessarily do, because I'm just always in like, let me just do this show. This is what I'm. Let me live in the moment. Versus like.
Well, we had
worrying
very
about it.
similar numbers for the live. Oh man, I made a bullet point here. We had very similar numbers to how many people were watching us live versus how many people were downloading the show. So it was crazy to hear, like, we were doing just live shows for people, what we thought. Then you would look at the numbers like, oh, wow, people are actually, like, still downloading this. Does this make sense to them? Oh, hang on, I got to disconnect from the Wi-Fi here. I'm ruining everything. I'm sorry.
It's
So the Stabcast, and this is probably a little bit later in the game. Loading. Yeah, this is October. This website, where's downloads? This is from 2012.
Okay.
Actually, 2011 into 2012, year ending.
Okay.
Stupid fiscal year stuff. Show number 257, for example, had 24,022 downloads.
Yeah.
About the same amount of people probably watched that live on Stickcam at some point during that show. But that's crazy. So you've got like 24,000 people watching you, then 24,000 people downloading it. Some overlap, but most of those are like different listeners.
Yeah.
Like, how's this making sense to them?
And it like that's I think the thing with a podcast is that as long as it's entertaining, like I don't think you need like I don't. And maybe it was just the way we did things on Stickcam, or you did things on Stickcam with Bruce, is that the visual was there and it was nice, but I don't think that we truly utilized it.
Not as a video service.
Yeah, it
because
was.
Those people were always in the back of our mind, like these people are going to be listening later.
Like it was like, I mean, when I first started doing the Stabcast, and I know I'm going ahead a little bit, but it was we stood side by side in front of the camera, and then at commercial breaks we would sit, and then eventually it morphed into us just sitting at our own desks and whatnot.
Right. You're jumping ahead though.
Yeah, but like it's so what I'm saying is that we didn't do anything. Like we didn't do jumping jacks. We didn't do anything. We didn't act. There was no like on Stickcam you could have had a black screen up or just the Stabcast logo, and the reception probably would have been the same once they like after the whole like we saw Bruce W and we're tuning in because he's hot.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. Let's all be honest.
But after that moment, you could throw a Stabcast logo up there and have the same content. I think people are still going to watch.
Yeah,
because there's nothing visual.
I think part of it though, not so much with Bruce on there because we stood side by side, but I'm jumping ahead too. I think later it was kind of cool to see when you'd get the band in there, kind of like cut to them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to see like things are actually happening here.
Yeah.
But I guess so that takes us up through what I did after Creepcast. So then you had something else start.
So while,
but you know what? I think we should take another break though, real quick, just here on the local level.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Kevin, it's Joe Kaliva, or otherwise known as Cosmo Joe. A nickname that I got on one of your podcasts, the podcast where I first met you. I'm not even sure if we ever explained to your listeners during my interview, my most recent interview, how I got that nickname. But I'll let you tell the story. Anyway, man, wanted to call and say congratulations on 10 years of podcasting. You were right there at the forefront, man, and you actually introduced me to podcasting. A bunch of years later, I became a podcaster myself, and I know how hard it is to sustain. My podcast lasted a whopping 8 months, so 10 years. Trust me, I get it. I know it's quite a feat. So, but you've come a long way from Happy Hour with Steel Tip, where I met you. and was the first time I was ever a guest on a podcast. And now you are your very own podcast network. Pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. So congratulations, brother. And here's to another 10 years. Keep it going. I've always loved your very natural, unscripted, laid-back style with your podcasts, your long-form interviews. It's everything a podcast should be, man. So I'll be listening here to Everything is Awesome. I love it, and looking forward to what the future holds. All right. Congratulations, man. Talk to you later. Bye.
Hey, what's up, big guy? It's Big O. Just wanted to call in and say congratulations on hitting your 10 years, man. That's like 50 in human years, so I know you're sitting there aging by the minute. So we've been through a lot, man. You've seen me go through trials and tribulations of life. I see you go through puberty and finally grow up. So just wanted to say congratulations, man. Keep up the good work, all right? This is Big O saying peace out.
I'm sorry, I had to run to the bathroom. I'm not feeling too well. We're back now, though.
It's all this laced smart water we're drinking.
I know. So Bruce joined, and we're kind of 9 years into the last podcast. They go quick after this, though. Let me tell you guys.
Yeah.
The first year is always the hardest year.
First year, and that's technically 2 years because it was the first year of Happy Hour, which is so little, and the first year of Stabcast, and the first year of me trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Right. So you kind of took that time off, and I don't know, were you watching what the Stabcast was doing when you were sitting there?
So after Creepcast season 1 ended, I would say that at some point during that my time off, which was from, we'll say, May or June of 2008 to about November of 2008, I probably started listening to it because I think I started talking to Jonesy again in that time period. You know, my personal life went into a big disarray in near the end of 2008. And that's when I started talking to Jonesy again. But that's why I didn't host. Like, the one thing that I've always said about me doing podcasts is that I am a great person to be involved with because it's a launching pad for many people. Stabcast launched from Happy Hour, the generic show, which was the other show on when Jay and I couldn't do Creepcast. We went on vacation, so the other guys did the other show, and that eventually springboarded into the generic show. So that's, I just didn't have anyone to do a show with, and then eventually we started Creepcast season 2 in like November-ish of 2008, which originally, and it's not the same episode that I said was missing before, but originally it was me, Mike D'Angelo, and my uncle.
Right.
I guess we're going to be the hosts. I've only listened to about 2 minutes of it because my uncle's on it, so I'm not ready to listen to it.
Okay.
But I know it's not the episode we recorded in the Outer Banks. And then after that, I don't know how, I assume immediately after that because my uncle, I think, he was either living in Philly at the time I think he was living in Philly at the time. So, like Manayunk, Philly. So it turned into, I think, me, Mike, and some of the other wrestling guys like C-Rob and Tom Foz. And that lasted for 10 weeks, but immediately turned into Happy Hour. So I would say by early 2009 is when, Jonesy and I are friendly again. Him and I were talking. We met at some point, and he was filling me in more about the Stabcast and what was going on with all that, and his involvement, which was, I guess, very little at that point.
Right.
And that I think he even mentioned that, that Bruce was leaving soon. Like, I guess it was, maybe there was some sort of notice. Because I said, let Santoro know if he ever needs someone to fill in. Like, I'd definitely be willing, or if you want to, give me his email or give him my email, like, definitely would love to, like, kind of make amends. And that's when I asked you to, can I use Happy Hour again? Like,
right.
I don't know. I guess in my mind, I was like, well, I don't want to start a show called Happy Hour and piss you off. Like, at that point, at a solid year and a half, more mature, right. I was, I I was very conscious of that, and that's when I decided to drop the with steel tip part, and to still not learning anything from the clusterfuck of podcasters. And it was still like a 4 to 5 person team on Happy Hour 2.0. But that's what, I would say it was probably February ish of 2009 when Happy Hour 2.0 started. And then at some point during that is when you asked me to co-host the show.
Right, once Bruce left, we needed a person.
And it was, I forget how many 5-week intervals at a time until before it just became official that I was going to be the co-host.
What did you do, like 2-3 years?
I started around episode 84, I think, and I was there. I was there till about 2.5 years, I think. I was there till
Yeah, I think it was a trick question then. Getting back to what we just talked about, you said, did Jonesy do the least number? I think that's what the question was. Who did more, Jonesy or Bruce W? And I think it was a trick question. Jonesy did weeks 1 to 34, and we didn't take a single break during that because we were establishing the brand and we wanted to make sure we did every week. Once Bruce W came into play, we really worked around his schedule a lot more.
Yeah.
So he did 34 to 84.
Yeah.
But we did less number of shows in that run, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what the trick question was.
Oh, okay.
He was on the show for more weeks, but we recorded less shows.
Interesting.
I think that's what it was.
And then the steel tip era of which was like it blows my mind that I was part of the show for as long as I was, because I honestly thought I would be there for 5 to 10 weeks before you found someone else to co-host.
I think that's kind of what we all thought.
And then
it was working though.
Yeah, it was working. It was and that's where I started to get that 2-person vibe. And again, it took a very long time to dwindle my show down to 2 people. But it was that's my introduction to Stick Cam was getting on episode 84.
Yeah.
I think that episode may have been one of the first episodes I did in that first 5-week run was me, you, and Jonesy. Because we did, I remember specifically, we all called bowling alleys for prank calls. And this is like in the age where like we were comfortable with doing prank phone calls still.
Yeah, technology was getting a little easier to make phone calls on the show.
Yeah, I think we were still using Vonage, but like internet was better, so it sounded better.
Yeah.
I know like near the end of my Stabcast run is when you got that software that was like web-based. And
it was somebody designed software. And gosh, it was called Studios, the company.
Yeah.
The Stabcast was literally like login number 3.
Yeah.
Like they approached us like, hey, can you beta test our software? Your user ID is 3.
Yeah. And but yeah, I was and I mean the amount that changed in the 2.5 years that I was part of the Stabcast. Like it literally started in your upstairs room.
Okay, right.
Us standing next to each other, and I feel like we were still in that room, but we switched sides at one point. But then we definitely
I think we bought a second camera. Yeah.
Yeah, because we did have. I think like Robots was a guest in there.
Right.
And we had a second camera like mounted.
It had to be so far away.
Yeah, it was mounted weirdly to get them in there, and but then eventually we came here and whatnot, and
well, not here, but in this building,
this complex, the Fuge.
Which I mean, that's how things have progressed, and with technology, we were then able to get studio space, sit 10 feet apart from each other.
Yeah, I mean, God, it was
with HD camera. Those are HD.
Yeah, and that was so. I would say I don't know what the time frame is us going from your upstairs bedroom to the Fuge, or whatever this complex is called. I'm going to call it the Fuge. But
it was pretty soon after.
But I mean, I would say that within probably 6 months of that is when Happy Hour finally dwindled down to 2 people.
Right.
We did like you were a guest co-host for a couple weeks while I was trying to find somebody.
Mm-hmm. You fired your whole staff.
I fired my whole staff.
Or they left.
I would say they left. I don't think I fired them.
There's 2 different variations of the story.
I guess there is 2 different versions of that story depending on who you ask. I would say they left though. And but yeah, I mean, like what was great about that the Steel Tip era doing the Stabcast, which also aligns with Happy Hour 2.0, which to date is my longest running show. I think I looked recently, and I think I didn't hit episode 200. I don't think, but I was in the 160s or 70s or something like that of Happy Hour. Because and again, jumping ahead, but that I ended Happy Hour probably only a few months after I left the Stabcast because I had the kid, and that just took up. Being a dad took up all my time. So podcasting, it took me a long time to get back to podcasting after that. So I feel like I'm kind of cheating when I say 10 years of podcasting. But if you go by a calendar, it's 10 years.
Okay.
Just with a lot of breaks.
From the time we started. I just looked it up. I thought we did 384 shows of the Stabcast. We did 417.
Oh, wow.
Of the Stabcast.
Really? And it's nuts because a lot of those episodes, because I listened to, like I said, randomly to Stabcast once I kind of got banished from that, from group season 1 of Creepcast.
Okay.
And that group that came along with it. I started listening, and Jonesy and I started talking again. You and I started talking again. And I obviously listened. I mean, I was part of it for so long, but I also would download and usually re-listen to it. Because I am maniacal. I'm egotistical. I need to hear my own voice. So it was I mean, I remember that at one point, even after I left the show, I kept on listening to the show when I could live, and definitely downloaded the podcast. And at one point, it just stopped coming on my podcast feed.
Well,
we'll get there.
We're still in the hate. When you joined, it was cool because the technology was getting better, like we said. And
HD. We were
in HD now.
720, maybe even 1080.
Yeah, there was still I think 1080, and then maybe 720 for. Maybe it jumped at one point when we got better internet. I don't even know. But there was we were still trying to figure out how to do the video switching.
Yeah.
There was still, like, XSplit's a thing now, but back then with everything, we had to figure out how to do a phone solution because there was no cloud-based phone systems then.
Yeah.
We were using, like, VidBlast, like, extremely high-end software to do the dopey 2, maybe 3 camera operation that we were doing.
Yeah, it's VidBlaster, and I remember using that for Happy Hour, and it was, like, so sophisticated. And I've used, XSplit really is... I wouldn't say it's any less sophisticated. It's just, I think, a nicer GUI system to use.
Yeah, it's designed for the kid that wants to do something.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think it perfectly suits the needs of what we were doing.
Absolutely.
We weren't running a sports VidBlaster was like, let's film a sporting event and broadcast
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
you don't need that, and even I would say you could probably.
How many camera previews do you need? None.
Oh yeah, it was, but yeah, I mean. Because we were evolving the video stream eventually to being separate, so we were involved. I mean, at one point, I think we had 4 cameras.
Yeah.
When we were in the studio upstairs next to the Neil Armstrong bathroom, we had camera 1, 2, couch cam, and band cam. So we had 4 going.
Yeah.
And it was
the computer couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah, I remember. I think when we added that 4th camera. Your computer just not recognizing any of the cameras, and it was like a simple add more USB ports to get more bandwidth for your USB. But yeah, I mean just the changes in technology and adapting to it to make it all better.
Yeah, which made the shows smoother too. I mean, the Stabcast then, and I don't know how you felt with Happy Hour when you were recording it up there. It was like almost on autopilot.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Happy Hour still felt a little bit more, like I had a little bit more. I don't want to say control because obviously we had control over Stabcast too, but it felt I guess less on autopilot because it took I did not have a steady co-host.
Right.
I mean, it was...
Well, what was weird was we would film in the same studio.
Yeah.
So we would do Stabcast, do 2 hours of that. People would be into it. Then literally you would... you would do Happy Hour immediately after that.
Yeah.
And there was a time where like I was the co-host on your show then.
Yeah.
So people were getting confused, like, what is this?
Especially because that happened a lot when we were standing next to each other in your upstairs room. Because that was the first time that I was doing Happy Hour Idol, and that's when Garrett and GFab.
And there was a Stabcast
auditioned.
banner hanging behind us.
Yeah. And because I had there was no sense of me going all the way back home to do the show when you were going to co-host until I found someone else anyway. And I think at that point, like as I was looking for a new co-host, we had known that you were looking for something. So like it was like, all right, well, let's see what you find, and then we'll see if there's room for me to do the show there too.
We were definitely out of there by episode 100 of the Stabcast.
Yeah,
100 was here.
Yeah.
We got a cake, if I remember correctly.
I think we did.
But anyway,
it was. Yeah, I mean, it was. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know. It's also, as much as I remember all that stuff, it's also a big blur because it's just so like all of it kind of blends together. Of like at that point, Stabcast and Happy Hour were almost the same show.
It was the same show.
It was. I mean, because even when it would switch to me and who was ended up being for Happy Hour my favorite co-host. Him and I had good chemistry, and we did the show in Studio 1 and then eventually Studio 2 when we moved down the hall to the I guess the bigger room. I don't know if it was bigger, but to the other room.
Yeah.
And
talk about evolving, yeah.
And so I never had a steady co-host, which kept things, I guess, interesting, but essentially, we followed. I was following the same format that I was following since Happy Hour with Steel Tip, except it was heavily influenced by live streaming and the Stabcast at that point, which meant we were still doing prank phone calls from the days of Happy Hour with Steel Tip. That's something that we did. I can't see doing now. You have to be of a certain maturity to do it. Like I would feel. Can you imagine doing a prank phone call at our age now?
Oh, I couldn't do it. It's crazy.
It's we barely wanted to do it near the end of my run of Stabcast.
Hello? This is Steel Tip. Yo. What's up? Talk right now? Huh? Yeah. Hello? Talk right now? I can't hear you, Kev. This is Steel Tip. I can't hear you, Steel Tip. Yeah. What's going on, Steel Tip? How
Do you have time
are
to
you?
talk right now?
I can talk, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want? What would you like me to talk about?
Sorry about that.
Sorry about what?
This is Steel Tip.
What's going on, Steel Tip?
Do you have time to talk right now?
I can't believe it took me that long to get that. That was fucking great.
Bye.
Later.
And it went on for longer than that, but it was part of the Stickam thing. That's what the crowd wanted.
Yeah.
And we were kind of on autopilot and just putting it all in perspective. And I know this is a little ahead, but Stickam eventually shut down, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But when you were on the show, we talked about like from the last 10 years, it was so hard to figure out how to do things. To show you how Stickam evolved, of course, I only have the Stabcast stats on there. It saw this with Stickam. We had 2.3 million views on Stickam, which was the number 16 most watched radio show, number 60 overall.
Yeah.
So it was crazy, like the kind of reception we got, and we were just kind of making up things as we went.
Yeah, and Happy Hour definitely benefited from following Stabcast.
Right, we were kind of. Yeah, you had the benefit of watching what we did.
Well, and that
doing stuff.
that and like I would still say that I tried to make it a unique experience because it was still O and I giving our perspectives on things.
Mm-hmm.
But like we still had those classic tropes of let's do phone calls, let's do prank phone calls.
Yeah.
Let's do silly shock jockey or not shock jockey is the wrong word, but like edgy jokes.
Now, did you end Happy Hour at one point when you were still on the Stabcast?
No, Happy Hour. So Happy Hour ended. That eventually moved into Mike's garage. No, did that move to Mike's garage? I don't know where that moved.
Well, because I was thinking, because somehow we got recognition on Stickam, because this is something I don't even know if you're going to remember this now, but within the last week, I stumbled on a video. There was a big tsunami in Japan.
Oh yeah,
And you and I were asked to do something on Stickcam, make a promo. We didn't do anything for the actual show. We made a promo for it, but we're doing a promo for something that has Angels and Airwaves, All Time Low, all kinds of big acts. They're the two that stand out in my mind because Robots and Race Cars did something sandwiched in between those two acts, but all kinds of huge musical asks, and they're asking us to do a dopey promo. I saw the video the other day. It's the stupidest thing ever.
It is.
The whole point was continuity errors.
Yeah, and it was my favorite, one of my favorite things there. I've watched that within the last 12 months.
Yeah,
and that is glorious.
Yeah,
and it is amazing that because like we never had with Happy Hour an official deal with Stickcam.
Right.
They just kind of, because I was part of Stabcast, as long as nothing else was like a paid or I guess a contracted feature for them at that 3 to 4 hour or whatever. Or I guess
they would feature you as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, at one point there was talks because and we're focusing on my main podcast, but like I splintered off. I always wanted to do a network thing, and I did the mistake of hosting all those shows. So like I had a sports show, I had a Walking Dead show and whatnot. But the closest I got to working with them officially was with my Zomcast show, which did like crazy numbers. Like when we just did like I think we did for 3 to 5 weeks. We did unofficial like, hey, we're just going to feature, see how it goes, and then we'll go from there.
Right. That was one of the things that you did after. Was Happy Hour still a thing then?
Happy Hour is still a thing.
Network. Yeah.
Yeah. Happy Hour is still a thing. I guess I did it with O still out of Mike's because we moved to Mike's garage.
But
we're gonna turn that.
The technology was getting easier and easier to do this stuff.
It was literally like, I mean, to put it frank, like if I could do it on my own at that point, like it's pretty easy because I'm not an audio engineer at all. I'm not a video guy. I can put a computer together. I can fix a network. I can do all that. But like, I'm not an audio engineer. I can talk into a mic. I can plug a mic in. But so if I can figure out how to run this. To run that stuff, it's like it's gotten to the point where it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
You just need to have a little bit of know-how.
Right. And Stickcam was very popular then.
Yes,
too,
I mean Stickcam was, I think, the largest live streaming thing back, from I guess at that point, like 2009 till when it shut down in 2014, something like that.
Yeah. But you had left Stabcast at that point. You were doing your own thing.
Yeah, so when we moved to Studio 2 upstairs, I was there for a couple more weeks. I think I feel like I was part of the I feel like around 200 episodes is what I did. Because I feel like it was either like 264 or 284 that was like around my last show. And then I did come back for 300. I think we talked about it way earlier in this broadcast. But I believe it was episode 300 is where I came back to do something with where we did all that stuff. But anyway, yeah. So after I left the Stabcast because it was just knowing that I was going to be a dad and having to play, and as you know now, like playing dad and having more than having a project, let alone multiple projects, just was not in the cards. And I knew that I had to cut that back. And I mean, it got to the point where like, I think I want to say even a lot of it, I started doing everything out of my apartment first. And then I moved to Mike's garage.
But either way, it was easier. You didn't need.
I didn't need
at the time. You needed to be in a studio.
Yeah,
out of necessity to do all this stuff.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, trust me. I certainly would rather have the studio, even to this day, and that's why like I'm transforming my shed into a studio just because it's nice. I don't know, and maybe it's just because I'm old school. Like I love the idea of having a studio.
Yeah.
And it was a hard decision to say I'm going to leave because I had been part of it for 2.5 years at that point.
Well, you met your
yeah. So my
I totally forgot about this. We brought this up.
Yeah.
Conversation a couple weeks ago.
I indirectly met my fiance through this.
I don't want to say we were celebrities because I think there's a terminology to celebrity that we don't fit.
Yeah.
But I think they came up as people will recognize me on occasion from the Stabcast or Stickcam, even still to this day. I'll get a message. And it brought up like, hey, have you ever met anyone off the show?
And I had, and honestly, because I keep thinking about it. I want to say, based on the timeline, it was when we were still in your upstairs room where I started talking to this girl from Las Vegas.
From the show, yeah.
From through the show. I think she was a Stabcast fan. And then
who wasn't?
And then
did she get a shirt? Did you at least give her a shirt after you filed this girl?
I don't think I did.
Oh man, send her a shirt.
And she and we eventually started dating long distance, and she eventually moved out here, and she was working at Chuck E. Cheese at the time. So I started dating her. She moved out here. She wanted to break things off, so she, I assume, moved back.
Oh, that was her. I thought you broke it off.
No, she wanted to end things, and but she was.
You left the Stabcast and she left you.
No. She I was still part of the Stabcast during all this.
I don't remember any of this.
Yeah, I was still part of the Stab. So I don't.
The girl from Vegas. That's where it ends.
She actually co-hosted. She co-hosted a couple episodes as the Nevada chick.
Of Happy Hour.
Yeah, of Happy Hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that did not happen.
That happened in the first in Studio One. Because I was still sitting next to the Neil Armstrong bathroom at that point.
I must have immediately left after the Stabcast was done. On
You would sometimes, yes. I think sometimes you would hang out. Sometimes you had stuff to do.
Did I stay for all of the Stabcast anyway?
Yeah.
Did I leave? Because we would literally finish recording the Stabcast, and then did you have a break or go right into Happy Hour?
I think that we kind of like
because I don't remember a lot of this Happy Hour.
I would say we would probably start at about 3:05. Like I don't think we it started right away, and eventually like that's where I think Happy Hour in that studio when it was eventually O and I think we broke down to 1 hour. We turned into a 1 hour show.
Because the reason I'm saying this for the people listening is because when you had a co-host in that studio, they would literally have to sit in my seat. I would guess.
Absolutely.
I don't remember ever like. Hey, have a nice day. Like, somebody sitting down as I stood up. I never remember that.
And you know what? I think we eventually went to starting at 4. I think there was eventually an hour break in between.
Okay.
Especially when we went to the hour. I think it was. We went from Stabcast was like 1:15 to 3:15, and then Happy Hour was like 3:20 to 5:20.
Okay.
And then eventually it just dropped to 4 to 5.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, so my the girl I was dating at the time, she broke up with me. She moved back to Vegas, but she worked at Chuck E. Cheese, and that's where I met my now fiance. So love was born indirectly out of this podcasting.
See, my stories from meeting people on the show not as pleasant. We have
This is the Matthew era now.
Yeah, so Matthew starts on the show after you leave. We get Matthew, who I felt it got off to a rocky start, but I feel we had a good dynamic afterwards. But we were so on autopilot, and we were so far up the Stickcam chain of things. Like, Stickcam shut down during Matthew's run on the show. And we got talking about people afterwards, and it was cool. Like, we were invited. They had a little private video room set up on their final days at Stickcam. And just like when I entered, I think my username on Stickcam was Santoro from Stabcast. And once people saw that come in, all the moderators that I've never met before, never seen, they're like, hey, thank you so much. Like, we would watch your shows on Saturday. It was hilarious. You, Steel Tip, you, Matthew. Just awesome. Funny. Thank you. But I asked them, I'm like, how close did we come? They're like, well, we were told we couldn't ban you. We couldn't kick you.
Yeah.
Like, and there were times where, like, we were close, but you guys knew where the line was. You'd inch up to it. The whole time you'd be like, oh, I know we shouldn't do this. You'd get to it. Then you'd leap over that line, then run back as quickly as you could. Like, oh, fuck. Like, it was fun just watching guys backpedal sometimes.
Yeah.
So we were doing one of these things on the show where it was like, we can pretty much, it was a twofold, talking about how millennials have no dignity anymore, pretty much.
Yeah.
And how we can pretty much do anything we wanted. And I talked about a story at a concert where I was working at a music venue, and girls pull up their shirts like it's nothing now. It's like, oh, can I meet the band? Here are my tits. It's like, well, I don't care. Like, no, you can't. That's not a valid form of payment for anything. Like, so we got talking about that. So a contest came into play where who can get somebody to send them an inappropriate picture of themselves on their cell phone before the end of the show. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I kind of think this can happen. And we weren't sure, and we threw it out there, put both of our numbers out there. Qualification, you have to first show us your ID before we'd open the picture. Don't you know, like, we get pictures of IDs all of a sudden. Like, here's my driver's license with all my personal information on it.
Which is nuts.
And you're over 18. You qualify for the contest. Here are my tits. Oh, Matthew, you won. And then we came up with a rule, like a redemption rule. Well, Santoro, you can now win if you can get the bottomless photo, which happened. It's like these girls have no dignity whatsoever. But outside of that, then I was going through some personal stuff in my life, so I was talking to the fans a little bit more.
Yeah.
As, just boosting my own ego, I guess you can say. So there was this crazy girl from London who got real graphic over some Skype sessions that we had, because Skype was now a thing.
Yeah.
And she ended up going crazy and then getting engaged with somebody. There was the girl in Chicago that ended up going crazy, getting engaged to somebody. And I want to say there was like one or two more in the mix. Oh, yeah, the girl from Ireland. Who, she's engaged to somebody now, but even when she was engaged, I'd get like a Snapchat from her at times. Which I don't really like use Snapchat too much. But it would be like, hey, here are my tits. I just had sex with this guy, but I bet you'd be so much better than him. It's like, first, how do you even reply to that? Like, okay, I bet you'd be so much better. I'm sure I would be, but that's not for me to say right now.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the only crazy fan I remember throughout all of my podcasting career in the last 10 years is I think he was a fan of the Stabcast, but also like a mega fan of Happy Hour.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've name checked him before, so I'm not going to, just out of the interest of because he because he pops up in comments on my like 5 years ago in your Facebook feed. Like, he shows up on comments. So at one point we were Facebook friends.
Yeah.
And he, like, there was a legitimate fear at one point that like he was going to find out where the studio was and like either send some men here to find.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that door was locked.
Yeah, like that was.
It was pretty. The building is fairly secure, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, it was the only time that I've ever had a fan that was like, "Wow, he's kind of crazy. He's kind of crazy." And like after. So I actually kind of forget the time, like the ending timeline of me podcasting, like 100%. Like, I know like Stabcast was the first to go. Honestly, I think Happy Hour is probably the next one to go, and then all the other ones kind of trickled down.
Right.
And then but like I remember after a year of not doing anything, like he would. I guess we were still friends on Facebook, and he post on my wall, I really miss you guys. I wish you would come back. I'm like,
I'll occasionally get people, yeah.
It's and it's not like as I guess really honestly as Stabcast, like for me turned into nothing. Like I wasn't able to watch it on YouNow, which is where you guys went eventually at some point.
Right after Stickham we went. Should I just finish the Stabcast story?
Yeah, you might as well, because
so close to the ending of it now. Let me just hit this button over here real quick.
Hey, Kevin, this is Chris from Let's Chat with Revel and Friends. Just so excited to hear you've been podcasting for 10 years. That's fucking insane. That means you've been doing this since 2007. I wouldn't even know what a podcast is till like 2008, 2009. And you've been a podcast creator. I know we probably didn't meet until your 9th, 10 year in, but I'm so glad we did. You were a wonderful guest on Let's Chat, and you were so kind to have me on everything. It's awesome. Kevin's just a really good fucking dude. Besides being a good podcaster, which I don't know what that really means anymore in life, but he's a good person. He's a good father, and just so happy for you, man. 10 great years, and here's to 10 more. All right, thanks, man.
There we go. Just like that.
Nice.
I had to take another bathroom break. I'm sorry. So you had left. Matthew took over. All kinds of crazy things happened. When you left, we were in the beginning stages of a deal with Sirius.
Yeah.
To be syndicated with them, for them to put they started with taking clips of the show and rebroadcasting them on their comedy channels.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you guys did a prank phone call today. It was pretty funny. We're going to chop that up and put it over here. Hey, that was a funny bit that you guys did, because a lot of it was bits.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's our real names and everything, it was a bit for the show. Like, some of these girls that we'd meet on the show, I would talk to them, Matthew would talk to them on the show. Then as soon as the show's over, we'd whatever. They'd keep texting, and I wouldn't reply to it. And then next Saturday when I'm doing the show, I'd reply to them again, like, "Hey, you didn't talk to me all week." Well, this is a kind of a character I'm doing on the show.
Yeah.
So we were in the formations of that. You kind of left when Matthew took over, and then the deal was finalized. Like, hey, we're going to take your show. We're going to simulcast it live on Sirius. This is kind of, it's going to be a big thing, which sounds cool. There's, money's exchanging hands, percentages are going around. It's all kinds of legal stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
And I want to say that's when all the stuff I've done and everything I learned, we touched on it. We had to figure out how to do a show. Then the technology finally caught up to us.
Yeah.
Like we talked about doing Vonage voice over IP stuff with the soft phone early on and multiple computers just to have a phone call. To when Matthew was on the show, we had a call screener. Like we would just get a notification on the screen like, this person wants to talk about this on the show. It's like, wow, this is pretty cool. We have like separate hotline numbers where like VIP guests can call and regular guests call this, and it's crazy. So many people are involved in the show at this point, and there's so much money. But then it started to become less and less fun too, as like there were options where I had to give up a percentage of my ownership in this company, which it's crazy to even say company, but when money's involved, like I'm sure you still get residual checks for like 20-some cents here and there.
I don't think I've had one in a while, but I remember
I got a 9-cent check the other day.
I remember a year or two ago. Maybe I am, and they're just showing up like at an old address.
Oh yeah, I think Matthew's getting them to his old address still.
I remember a year or two ago, I got a 12-cent or 27-cent check or
because
something.
when like everything became legal, if like we replayed a clip with you in it, they'd have to pay you a royalty.
I remember I sent you an email. I was like, "What the hell is this $27 check for?" Or 27
cents. Yeah, it was something crazy. Oh well, we played a 2-second clip of you.
I don't even think I cashed it. I think I just threw it away.
Yeah, because there were there were so many things that would happen. Because you had a clip where when we would open up the chat room,
the lurkers.
Yeah, for Stickcam lurkers. So basically, you're telling hot girls to get on the camera, essentially, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then Frankie would, from Robots and Race Cars, he recorded a parody of it. So when Matthew it pissed Matthew off, so I kept playing it. And like each time I played, it's like 1 cent you get. So I would just like play it over and over again. But that's how that came about. But, Sirius owns the show, and then they start telling us, like, you have to do this on the show. You need so many prank calls before the show. Oh, my God. You need so many of this. You need this. You need this. So it became less and less fun. The next thing I know, I'm down to, like, 40%. Like, I don't even own the majority of this company anymore. I have no say in what happens. And the show kept going, and then, like, the checks stopped coming in. I'm like, well, what's going on with the pay now? Like, I was getting paid pretty decently for what I did. Now I'm getting nothing. And when I say pretty decently, like I was getting $100 to record a show on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, that money's going to this person now. And then we had to hire another call screener, so that person's getting money. The guy that edits your show is getting paid. The producer of your show is getting paid, $50,000 a year. It's like we were in the 6-figure range and not seeing anything.
Yeah.
It's like, what is happening here? But we were in contract, and finally, like, Matthew and I had a blast doing it. Then, family stuff came up with him, and he's still coming out. Basically, both of us had, like, family stuff that came up.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, we're just kind of doing the same thing. Then contractually, we can do a replay every 4 weeks. So it would literally be 4 shows, 2 replays, 4 shows, 2. We would always do them where we'd have 2 weeks off in a row.
Okay.
And then it got to the point that I was down to like a 20% ownership in the company. Still not getting paid. And we had like 2 months left. And I just called Matthew one day. I'm like, man, why don't we just end this? It's like crazy to think, like, I've been doing the show for 8 years. It was me, Jonesy, me, Bruce W., me, Kev, me, you. Let's just end this. Like, as much as I don't want to do it, it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
And he noticed. He's like, yeah, man, like, you've really been on autopilot the last couple months. And it's like, let's just end it. I think you're going to be a lot better. So we ended it, and I just told him, like, we got 2 months in this contract left. We're done. So I posted something. I don't even own the website anymore. So I had to, like, log in, like, figure out how to do this and post something saying, hey, it's been exactly 8 years. We're done. Sorry. And then on top of all that, Matthew and I sat down at, like, a dinner a week after that. We're like, hey, let's come up with another show. Let's do this again. but let's do it differently. Like all the stuff that wasn't fun. It's like, yeah, technology's made it so easy to do this now. Like we can do it at your house, like, because the studio, like, I ended up moving, so I'm like 45 minutes away. He's an hour away, but I'm 15 minutes away from him. So it's like, let's do that. Nothing ever came about. We came up with a name. We researched all kinds of names. The name was really good. We just didn't do it anymore. But it's funny, like 10 years ago when we started Happy Hour, I don't know if that's the dream to get a deal on Sirius, but it's like I've been through it, and it certainly wasn't a dream.
I'll tell you, because I remember the talks about Sirius were like happening for quite a while when I was still part of the Stabcast, and it was one of the things that kept me along as long as I did, because I knew at some point, like if it wasn't going to happen, I had to bail.
Yeah.
And it took a very long time for it to happen.
It probably happened because of you, but you reaped. I don't want to say there were any rewards off of it because, I mean, we're talking under $10,000 is what we made off the deal.
Yeah.
Somebody made $200,000 off the deal, but it trickled down to under $10,000 on our end.
Yeah, and it's because honestly, I think it was at the point where I was saying like it's either Happy Hour or Stabcast has to give, and like at the time like it was easier for me just to move Happy Hour to my apartment.
Yeah.
Had the Stabcast deal happen while I was still waiting out, I probably would have stuck around and ended Happy Hour, to be honest.
Yeah.
But that probably would have changed. Like, it probably would have soured podcasting for me, just based on the story you just told.
It just didn't get fun because you start getting people all of a sudden like, you're being syndicated, and it's cool because we're getting callers calling in like, I'm listening to you on Sirius right now. It's like, that's kind of cool. But then like we'd get real time stuff from them like, hey, be funnier. Okay, let me juggle. And meanwhile, like Stickcam ended, and like Stickcam was such a big part of the show. We're on you now, like trying to find like a new dynamic over there. Our buddy left you now. It's like so crazy. It's like, be funny. Okay, call a prostitute. Okay. We'll dial the number for you on the cloud software. It's like, oh wow, they really control literally every single aspect of this show right now.
And I guess that kind of like, as Stabcast ended is when I was like planning this show.
Yeah.
And it eventually was born to be what it is. It was originally it wasn't going to be so. This show is heavily podcast based. Like a lot of podcasters guest on this show, which was actually the original intention. But I didn't believe that I could market a show like that. And
I'm on it.
So I
Just a podcast.
I opened it up to like every kind of guest,
Yeah.
and then found that the podcasting community is actually pretty strong. Like, it's nuts. Like, there wasn't a podcasting community 10 years ago.
Right, and now it's crazy. Like, stuff we talked about, like PodCon is happening.
I mean, there's actually a PodCon happening somewhere called PodCon. But in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Podcast Fest is entering its 5th year, and, like, I'm heavily involved in that now. And
10 years ago,
like,
we did a live podcast, it was unheard of.
Yeah. And now there's 62 shows playing at the Philadelphia Podcast Festival this year.
There's 1,000 cap theater. Well, it will be seated. So there's a 600 cap theater across the street from the convention center that's doing live podcasts during that podcast festival.
So
crazy that 600 people come out to watch somebody record.
Yeah, I'll have 25 people at my show at Tattooed Mom, but
including the staff that are obligated to be there.
Yep. And I will be the one that's also running the podcast fest at Tattooed Mom that weekend. So I'll be the one of those employees. But yeah, it is just crazy to see like 10 years. Like hasn't been 10 years consistent, but I mean, it's in 10 years we have seen the technology change and make it so easier to. I mean, I record a lot of promos on my phone. I just put in my Apple earbuds.
Yeah.
I have an app that records at a higher quality than the voice recorder that's built in, and it. As a person who's not an audio engineer, it doesn't sound any different to me after I match the volume and produce it. So, podcasting is just incredibly. Literally, you can do everything from your phone now if you wanted to.
Yeah, and to hear the quality from earlier when you played.
Yeah, I mean,
clip.
the various clips that are probably going to be played throughout this episode here that I put in, it's just nuts that you can hear the quality difference.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear, the character change, whether it be, when as Steel Tip all those years or now. Like,
everything changed. Yeah, like you said, the quality changes, the character changes.
Yeah.
I was just thinking the stuff we used to do on the Stabcast, like
it's all the stuff that we did on the Stabcast that
you
we did
telling
on
hot
Happy-
girls to come.
Like-
do you remember that voiceover?
No, not
Hey, lurkers. Steel Tip here.
It was part my Val Venus impression from WWE, or F at the time.
Let me see if can I try to do it by memory real quick?
Yeah.
It's been at least 4 years since I've heard this. Hey, I'm not going to do the voice.
Hey, lurkers.
Hey, lurkers. Steel Tip here from the Stabcast and Happy Hour. I know you put that in there. Ah, fuck. I can't even. Hey, lurker. If you're blonde hair, blue eyes, see your D cup, tank top optional?
No.
Tank top, brawl optional. Hey, lurker. If you're 18 to 24, blonde hair, blue eyes, see your D cup, tank top, brawl optional. Somehow, you then segued into
join the live camera.
Join the
or
live
something.
camera.
Don't be a lurker. Sign in.
Yeah, sign in.
I
and
don't.
join the live
It is,
camera.
and it's nuts. Like looking at all that stuff because it is, not like it's not a show I would do now. Like it's not a show.
It's not. Yeah. It was funny at the time and it fit at the time.
Yeah. And maybe 25-year-old Kev can do that show again. Maybe there's a 25-year-old out there that can do that show. But me at 32 going on 33, like, I doing everything is awesome is one of the most, if not most creatively fulfilling things I've done. And it also helps that I don't rely myself on a co-host. Like that's always been like a struggle too. Even when you get down to two people, you still have to rely on each other to be able to make certain times.
Mm-hmm.
So the beauty of doing an interview show is I just have to rely on a guest.
Yeah.
Making a time. So, yeah, it's just nuts.
Just how everything
Years.
progressed. And
Yeah.
it's weird, like, we talked about the Stabcast because I feel that's, for me anyway, it was the bulk of the 10
Yeah.
years. It was 8 years.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we talked about the good and the bad. If you would have stayed on the show, never gotten the serious deal, Stickcam would have stayed open, would we do the same show we were doing when you were on, or would it have matured?
I don't know. I feel
Hard
like
to tell.
I feel like it would had to mature because we're parents now. Like it's not.
Our life has matured. And
Yeah, like I don't feel comfortable doing
Yeah.
that humor anymore. I don't feel comfortable listening. I don't listen to Stern anymore. It's
Yeah.
not my bag anymore.
And it's funny because I think had the show changed with our lives, I think it would have worked, and I think the numbers would have stayed the same.
Yeah.
Like we read over before, the number 16 overall radio show in their lifespan, which is crazy because we weren't on there from day one.
Oh,
Stick
yeah,
Camp,
yeah.
But and we only did a weekly show.
Yeah.
But I think it would have worked because I feel people liked us as people. I think a lot of the people that watched us on Stickcam liked us as people.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone podcasting kind of has to realize.
And-
like the technology's there, and as long as you're a personable person,
Yeah, totally.
you can do it.
And I think that is now, like, I think even more so now than it was 10 years ago, that podcasting is super intimate because there are so many options. So people are seeking you out now. And if
Mhm.
they're listening to your show, I think absolutely, I think they care more about you, the person, or even character. But that's what they're looking for to do.
Yeah, and we were in the unique position too on Stickcam. They were forced to watch us if they went to the website, but they didn't have to stay watching us.
Yeah, no, and that's I mean, there's definitely like, I mean, every step, like even Happy Hour with Steel Tip was a big learning thing for me because it's from there I did my own show. I produced my own show and like, eventually getting to Stickcam and working side by side with you. It was and I'm still learning. Like working with guys that like Bridgeset Sound down in South Street and
9th and South, 7th and South,
somewhere around there. Yeah.
Red sign.
Bridgeset Sound and even working with like just talking to other podcasters, whether it's Talking Shop or whatever, like it's still like no matter what, it's always still just you're learning new things and it's ever changing. Like it's going to be nuts to see what happens in the next 10 years in this medium, to see where it's at and how it's done and if it's.
I'm excited for it. Just that I don't do it anymore, but
Yeah.
it's crazy to see.
I hope to be doing it still. Who knows though? Because at some point, like you can only not get paid to do something for so long.
Well, I was paid for it and wasn't that fun.
Yeah, that's true.
But again, we were being forced to do something, so we couldn't mature as the show did.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Like, I don't know that I would have succeeded in that serious contract, because definitely by 2012, which was only a few short months after I left, I feel like my humor would have I would have wanted to change how I did the show, because I was a dad at that point.
Yeah.
And that totally it's probably a cliche thing to say, but becoming a dad or a parent, it 100% changes the way you conduct yourself.
Changes everything. I mean, even Matthew, like when we were being told to do stuff, like Matthew was married at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do certain things anymore. It's like, do this. It's like, oh, it was funny back then, but I think our audience has kind of matured with us.
And like, I don't. Not for nothing, I love that I have an audience, and I love that people listen to this show. But I at the end of the day, I'm 100% doing it for me. I'm not doing it for them. I'm happy that they're along, and maybe if I was doing it for them, I'd have a bigger audience. But again, I've done a show where I've been part of a show that was getting 25,000 views an hour or every 2 hours or whatever. I've been part of a show that, I hosted a show that got 10,000 an hour. I don't think I've been more creatively fulfilled.
I think if you do it for yourself, and that's what, hopefully we taught some things along the way, even though it's so much easier to do it now.
Yeah.
I think anyone can do it, and just do it for yourself. That's the best advice I can leave kids with.
All right. Is there anything else you want to say before we officially bag this show?
Just do it for yourself.
You can check out this show on Twitter at RealAwesomePod. You can find.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
So I went on vacation once during the Stabcast, and you and Travis did the show. I'm on vacation, and you are telling people to send naked photos to my cell phone as I'm on vacation. That was. Yeah, my phone starts blowing up all of a sudden. I'm like, what the hell's happening here? Inappropriate picture, inappropriate picture, inappropriate picture. I'm like, oh, they're recording the show. Let me listen live to see. And I called because that's when they had the call screener, right?
I think so.
So I called him like, just put me on hold. And I'm listening to this show live. And I think he eventually took my call because I think they put like Santoro on hold or something. You guys took my call. But I'm like, please stop doing this. And then I got even more.
And on that note, at RealAwesomePod on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. You can call us at 267-223-4965. You can snail mail us at P.O. Box 177, Paradise Hills, Pennsylvania.
Let me write this down.
19030. More importantly, you can find us on awesomepodcast.com, on iTunes. Leave those 5-star reviews. You can find us on the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network on Core Temp Arts.
This is a 3-star show. This one.
It's 5-star.
Like a little long. It's a
3-star. It's 5-star.
Got a little outside at times.
CoreTempArts.com. And
I'm giving it a 3 right now.
And, for Everything is Awesome, I am Kev, and you're listening to us right here on awesomepodcast.com. We've been awesome.
That was okay.
Thank you for listening to the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Core Temp Arts shows, visit coretemparts.com.